Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool.
When I'm thinking about video games, I was watching a video by Arlo recently, which we talked about before this episode now, about how he was talking about how Miyamoto, the greatest game designer ever, in my opinion, and I think most people's opinion, I think most people would agree, that he doesn't like story in his games. And his interviews on it are a bit more than just, I hate story, there should be none in there. He says it should be an establishing principle, a means to an end sort of a thing. Yeah. So, because you always see that, where Mario is doing something. You're not just running in a void.
Making a cake for Princess Peach, then Bowser comes and kidnaps her.
Well, Peach says, come over and have cake, is the thing.
Fair.
Yeah. And in one of them, I think in the first game it might be she's just kidnapped, I'm not sure. But there is something going on. And there's also a lot of story in his worlds. There's everything is coherent in a sense. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but I was talking to you a while ago how Mario has two creators. One of them is Miyamoto, who coded the game, did the art, and designed all the levels. And the other guy, I forget his name, but he was the story writer, and that's it.
Huh.
And I thought, wait, so there's one guy that did everything, and there's one guy that wrote the story. And they're both the creators. And you said at the time, yeah, but Mario makes sense, doesn't it? Even though it's this crazy, wacky world. But
Mario makes sense.
It's like, why do you have a plumber breaking bricks, getting flowers, changing size, fighting turtles? Everything's coherent somehow.
Yeah.
And there's actually a lot to it, like pipes. So he's a plumber. That makes sense. And there's growths and turtles in the sewers. Okay, like overgrown plants and turtles in the sewers. That kind of makes sense. And there's flowers because nature or something.
Well, it may just be because it's been around for so long.
But mushrooms obviously are a thing in sewers.
Yeah.
And then a giant turtle, that's the leader of the turtles. That makes sense. And even then, you're not really questioning it. Like, why are these floating gold? Why are there all these floating gold coins everywhere? Why are there shells that you can pick up and throw? And it just sort of works when you play, and it doesn't stop. And because what I've noticed about a lot of platformers is that they actually, not a lot, certain platformers lack coherence, even if they create all these. So there's what's it called? You're this little robot. It's like Mario Maker, but taken to the next level. It's called...
I don't think I've played it.
Yeah, no, it's... Anyways, you play as this little robot. You can grab little suits that give you extra powers, and you're like a mail delivery bot. You're trying to bring a box to the exit and throw it in. And it looks very impressive, but it's a bit incoherent in some ways. Like, why do I suddenly have this propeller? Why do I suddenly have this ninja suit? I'm a robot. Why do I have a ninja suit?
Yeah.
There's... You look at Mario and it feels like, even if you've never seen Mario before, you've never played it before, you look at it and it feels friendly and homey, and you're like, I want to play this. This looks fun. This looks cute. Whereas a lot of games look chaotic or confusing until you can parse all the elements together and break them down.
Yeah.
A lot
of that comes down to design, like choices in just how the things look. Like, now you can change. So what's the difference between Mario and Luigi? Is Luigi slightly taller? And then it's parsed out so Luigi's skinnier, and his mustache is actually a different shape. And that's one of the biggest differences between them, is actually the shape of their mustache. So Mario's mustache gives him a smiley face. It gives him like this big round smiley face. And Luigi's mustache is more drooping, and it gives him a worried face. And that's their two personalities. Like, if you just show us on a picture of both of them, is design-wise, Mario is round and happy and bouncy, and Luigi is willowy and worrisome.
Yeah, there's an aspect that a lot of game makers don't focus on, or don't know how to focus on, or maybe aren't aware of, which is readability.
Yes.
It's related, but it's not even like video games. It's The Simpsons. I didn't know this, but The Simpsons has several 100-page documents on how to draw Simpsons characters. And they have a huge amount of rules, like mouths cannot have pointy corners. They have to be rounded corners. Eyes cannot ever be cross-eyed. Eyes can never touch. They either have to be separate or completely or noticeably overlapping. They can never just touch it. Hair has to be, like each character's hair has specific rules. So like Barney, he has 3 spikes here and a thing there. there's exactly this many on Sideshow Bob's palm tree weird hair.
Yeah.
There's exactly this many fronds, and they are in this order. No character can have weirder hair than the Simpsons, the Simpsons family.
Yeah.
No one can have your head and your hair must always be separate unless you're Bart.
Yeah. Or Lisa.
Yeah. There's the amount of loops in Marge's hair is specifically chosen. How exactly how tall it is specifically chosen. How wide people's eyes are exactly 7 pupils wide. Like, they have very specific rules for everything. And even for designing a new character, they have rules like you can't have the nose obscure the eyes. You can't have... And what it does is it makes a very obvious that is the Simpsons, and it's very pleasing to look at style.
Even their cameo characters always look weird because they look like humans. And that's part of the design, is they're meant to stand out because they're cameo. Because they look like the character they're cameoing.
No, I don't know if I've seen...
I'd be surprised if you haven't seen a cameo character, because they have like one every 4 episodes.
In The Simpsons?
Yeah.
I haven't really watched The Simpsons.
Okay.
I've seen season 3 where Michael Jackson is sort of in it, but it's like a crazy prisoner that thinks he's Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
And I've only ever seen season 3.
Okay.
I haven't actually watched The Simpsons.
Yes.
It's quite hard to get a hold of.
Well, character design, though, I saw a very interesting thing on anime Reddit, which was, it was just like a sort of fun picture about, so, what was it called? Something Fairy Dream Girl?
Manic Pixie Dream Girl?
Yeah, Manic Pixie Dream Girl. So there's a trend in a lot of animes that are made recently of basically the popular slice of life romance animes where a girl shows up in a guy's life and shakes it up, and it's the relationship between the two of them. And there's 4 very popular ones, and each one of the girls has a very distinct design, like you can almost recognize them immediately. However, their male counterparts, the main characters of the anime, are kind of like, oh, that's that character, that's that character. And in this one picture, it's like, okay, I recognize all the girls, but I'm not certain who the guys are in this image, except for one of the male characters. And this manga does a really good job of it, or anime, it really focuses on each character as a distinct personality, but everyone has the appearance where you can recognize them. And the main character has this white flower in his hair, and it makes him basically immediately recognizable. That's that character. And he's the only MC of note of those 4 MCs. It's like, oh, that's him.
Main character. Yeah. And that's something that... Well, I think a lot of those slice of life animes, I think what they're probably doing is trying to make the main character an everyman that you can sort of project yourself into. But the point I'm getting at with character design is that you don't need to have a plot to put a lot of thought and care into your world.
Well, the Dark Souls games are kind of a point at that.
Well, they have a plot that's obscured from the player, or maybe you could say they have a story that's obscured from the player.
I guess.
I'm not sure which. It's tricky. I was talking to a guy about this because I said I don't like story in games, and he says you can't separate the games from the story. And so we're having this long conversation, and part of it is definitely that the definitions are very tricky here. So maybe we should come up with some right now, because when some people are talking about story, they're talking about lore. They're talking about everything that goes into the world. So, and not character design though. That's something separate. Like the fact that Mario and Luigi are plumbers and they have, like you said, a droopy mustache and a happy mustache.
Yeah.
That isn't lore. That's just design of the world. That's world design maybe. But lore is something like Dark Souls has all this history and everything has its place, but that's not shown to the player. You instead can look at items and say, oh, this is this thing, and this is this thing, and that's there, and this is here. And you can piece together what happened.
I disagree with the design being separate from the story in some ways. Because when I was thinking about Dark Souls, like, a lot of the story for me, I don't, like, care about the piecing together these items and, like, ooh, this thing has this writing on this, like... I look at each creature's design and like each enemy's makeup and how it's put together, like its actual appearance, and that's a lot of this tale to me.
Yeah, yes. Well, the thing is, there's very clearly...
Like even artistic choices tell me a lot about it.
There's very clearly a background that they started from that they used to extrapolate their world.
Yeah.
So Hemingway said something about writing, where he said, if you know what the last 15 pages of your book are, you don't need to write them.
Okay.
Or as long as you know the ending, you don't need to write it.
Yeah.
And the way I look at that is, so you have Brandon Sanderson. He writes these stories where there's very clearly defined rules that he writes out in excruciating length in the indexes and throughout the story, and the characters are always talking about it. And there are other authors who have very precise rules for whatever in the world, magic, technology, whatever it might be, but they never say it in the book, and instead the book just happens.
Yeah.
So Edge Chronicles is kind of like that. They do explain it over time, but there is very... Someone like Twig is just living in this world. He doesn't know why it was founded. He doesn't know why every civilization is destroyed. He doesn't know why some things fly, some things fall. He doesn't know any of like the physics of that world. He just goes through this world.
Yeah.
And when you get to like the Quint trilogy, then he is educated in science at the academy, so you get a bit more of that. But I'm trying to think off the top of my head of a series that has very clear rules that they never reveal, but it's obviously there. Lord of the Rings is kind of like that.
Yeah.
Where there does seem to be some strict limitations on the characters that aren't talked about. My Gollum's book is kind of like that, but I do have a lot of exposition in areas. However, the exposition, bit of a spoiler maybe, but the exposition isn't actually right in a lot of the areas.
Yeah.
But
has a lot of clear rules, but it's not explicit in the writing. I mean, Harry Potter's a mixed bag, because sometimes it does and other times it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think Harry Potter counts, because I think each spell kind of is unique and does its own thing.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. That's an amazing way to have a world, but it isn't... There's not a clear rule set going on back there or something. But that's secondary to... So we need definition for story and design and lore and plot. So... I think lore is everything that got the world to the state it's in right now.
Yeah.
I think that could be what lore is. And I think lore isn't... Like, Mario doesn't need deep lore, right?
No.
You don't need to know that all the bricks that he's smashing were once toads. I mean, that's horrifying, but you don't need to know that.
Yeah.
And you don't need to know that was a magical spell. And I don't think having... I'm trying to think of how it would work. Like, you find you find a broken brick. This is one of, like, a sort of Dark Souls-esque, like, you pick up a broken brick and it's like, this is the remains of one of the toads that was transformed by Bowser's evil spell or something. You don't need that.
And then you put the brick in your backpack for later use.
It could actually be... Now, that on the other hand, that could actually enhance the game. You don't always need a dark backstory to enhance the game. But having that... there's more behind, there's deep waters, and what is that? Still waters run deep.
Yeah.
That's what Dark Souls does, right? You have this world that doesn't seem to have any explanation, but then you look a little deeper and there's a reason for most things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's is an excellent example of that, where you have this very simple looking jump scare game that the creator put a huge amount of work into the backstory and lore around it that you might never see. Hello Neighbor was like that originally too.
Yeah.
Or people thought it was, but it might have just been that the developer was throwing random stuff out.
Yeah, no, the Hello Neighbor was, the developer was throwing random stuff and people put more story into it because like, ooh, this is just like Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, and they're like, oh wait, this is Galatians 22:2, and this is... And that means that this and this...
I mean, there's advantage if you do something like Hello Neighbor, is you could do that, and then when people say that's something, the next update, you make it so that's the thing, and then you throw another random thing at the wall and see if it works.
That might have been their original plan.
Yeah.
But it sort of fell apart because it can become quite hard to tie everything together.
Yes.
To create something like Five Nights at Freddy's is a massive amount of work. And even then, he did it in a sort of ham-fisted way, in a way, because there's a lot of, like... it's not just hidden stuff. There's like augmented reality type stuff. Like you have to click on this tile 7 times and this 6 times. And that isn't a hidden detail in the environment. That's like a ridiculous puzzle you have to solve that will get you nowhere in the game, but it'll give you another. But it's interesting and it's impressive. And there's a decent number of games that do that, and it's not easy to do whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think Franbo was like that, if I remember correctly. It had a lot more depth behind it, but it's been a long time.
So lore, though, is the background of
Yeah.
this is what happened.
This is, or not what happened. This is why this is what got you to where you are. I guess it is what happened in a sense,
Yeah.
but it's also the current state of things.
Yeah.
Even because you might, like in Dark Souls, everything has been stuck that way for thousands of years potentially, and you are the one thing that's actually changing. It's almost like Dark Souls is a time loop, and you're the one person breaking the time loop. So there's that. So then when people say story, they're often talked about different things, because story to some is the Dark Souls. Dark Souls has a great story. Yeah. And then other people, when they say story, that means dialogue or cutscenes or... So I think plot. So let's go for plot. So plot is what happens throughout a medium. So the plot of a story is what happens throughout the book.
Yeah.
Because the book can have a background, it can have lore, it can have character designs. Like you can have the archetypal hero, you can have the mentor, you can have the lancer, you can have the girl, those sort of things. But the plot is what actually happens throughout the story. So I think the plot of Mario is Peach is kidnapped. You go from one world to second world, the third world, the fourth world, all the way to eighth world, and you rescue Peach.
Yeah.
So that's the plot of Mario. And even then, I think a lot of people don't mind plot because that's just the structure of the outline in a sense. Yeah. But there comes a point very quickly beyond, like Mario is basically as bare bones as it can get. But there becomes a point very quickly where people start disliking plot. And so I wonder what that new word is. Is that this story, maybe? Is that what we're talking about when we talk about story? Because the moment... So Super Mario World, you hit these blocks, and they say, Yoshi's been kidnapped and all his kin have been trapped in eggs. And there's a couple of these blocks early on, and then there's less and less throughout the game. But they pause the game for, I think, 15 seconds, and there's no way to skip them or close them early. Yeah. And every time I do it, ever since I first played the game, I think I've broken the game and frozen it or crashed the game because they last for so long. Yeah. Like, I don't know who it's for because, like, even when I was a little kid, I was reading these things and then waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And I don't think, like, I think they stay up until you press A, potentially. So I don't know why they don't disappear the moment you press A again. They're very annoying. And what is that called?
Exposition.
Okay, good. I like that. Yes. So, yes, that's the thing. Okay, so story, we still don't have a definition for what story is.
Well, story could be the broader thing of what all this is. Well,
story is the plot, the exposition, the lore, I want to tell you a story. The story is the tale that is created through playing the game. Yeah. So, okay, here we go. So when people say they don't like story in games, I think what they mean is they don't like it when the story and the plot are the same. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like, and this is the argument. I'm actually very frustrated. Like this guy, we were having this very good faith conversation the whole time. Yeah. That never changed. And we were both trying really hard to understand each other. And I'm still so frustrated because his worldview is like antithetical to mine. It's so confusing. I was trying to explain it to him. I was like, okay, this is like I'm seeing people going around and picking giant spiders up off the ground and eating them live, like like belly first, and they're like, this is great, and I'm like, I don't understand. I just cannot understand. And I'm not about to try, but because I was trying so hard to explain that what I don't like is whenever there is no difference between me playing a game and me watch someone play a game. And I was like, okay, that's it. Brilliant. It's not that I don't like story in games. It's that I don't like it when there's no difference. Okay, how about, since we define story as what happens throughout the course of your play, I don't like it when my story is the same as the story of someone I'm watching.
Yeah, so the death of Edith... Is it the death of Edith Finch?
Yeah.
Is that called? So I watched...
Probably one of the best stories in a video game there is.
I watched Tom play that, and I never have to play that game. Yeah. There is no experience I can get out of that game. Because the actual gameplay is like a bunch of mini games and walking around.
Yeah. Now, there is something... But even in Edith Finch, you can play with the bathtub differently as the baby, slightly. Yeah. When you're working as the fishmonger, you can mess up earlier or later. So you can even then, you can have a slightly different experience than Tom. But those things are so...
Well, that's not the goal of the game. Those are what gets you to...
Right, but there is... But you're not trying to get to the goal of the game, right? You're trying to experience the game.
Yeah.
So you could say, I want to play What Remains of Edith Finch, but I want to I want to play around with the rubber ducky in the bathtub slightly differently. So there is still something there for you.
Yeah.
But if you go and you play Dragon Slayer and you beat the game, your gameplay will be identical to anyone else that has beaten the game.
Yeah.
Because Dragon Slayer is like a 2-hour-long QuickTime event.
Yes.
And it has a lot of bad endings, and they're very interesting bad endings, and it's all fantastically animated. But at the end of the day, it's a choose your own adventure book.
Yeah.
And so what you could say is, well, I'll have different bad endings than watching someone else play. But the thing I don't like is that given X amount of people, your experience will be identical. Whereas RimWorld, given infinite people, everyone will have a unique experience.
Yes.
And I think
something to note on, everyone will have a unique experience. Maybe not infinite, but a lot of people. Because infinite's too many.
No, I think infinite. Like
each person will have a different thing that'll stand out to them in playing RimWorld. Like, you could have a grandmother who's really enthralled with how many potatoes she got. And you could have another person talking about how epic the shootout was.
But you can say the same for something like Dragon Slayer. Like, someone might care more about their reflexes. Someone might care more about the art or the music. Yeah. So I don't think it's a standout event. It's the differences. But what you're saying isn't wrong. It's just not what I'm getting at. But what you're saying is interesting, because that maybe lets me see this guy's viewpoint better. Because his argument was that every fighting game is the same. Like, no matter who is playing Mortal Kombat 7, let's say, they will have the exact same experience, which is the experience the developers intended. And this was the thing that we could not communicate on whatsoever. Because to me, a fighting game is like a conversation or a actual martial arts match or a tennis game, or there's infinite form in it. Like, I don't think people get this. Like at chess, when Magnus Carlsen plays Hikaru, whatever his name is in chess, right? And they play 100 games. Each game will be different, but the developers of chess, their intended experience was to make a game where everyone was able to demonstrate their positioning and strategic and tactical ability. And yet there is no intended experience in that Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru are playing the game exactly. They're moving the pieces in the exact way the developers saw, right?
Yeah.
There is... There's a... I don't know if people get it when I say it, because every time I say it, it seems so profound to me, but it doesn't seem to get across that there is a beauty in motion and a beauty in form. Like when you're dancing or when you're playing music or
making a painting.
When you're painting. But not in the completion of the painting,
so one of the big things for painting about me is I give paintings as gifts to people. And it's a nice thing. It's like, oh, I gave you a painting. But part of the reason why I do that is I enjoy the process of painting. And like the final thing is a nice result to have afterwards, but it's to actually go through the painting. I'm not like, I want this exact image, and that's why I'm
gonna get. If you want a final result, that's what Stable Diffusion's for.
Yeah, or I can like take pictures of things.
This is actually something, like, obviously there's artists.
Well, no, even taking pictures, like there's the whole process, like lift your head a bit, or like I remember watching.
I want this angle. I want this light.
A master photographer. He walked out and saw light reflecting off a pool, and he jumped down into a crouch and like took a picture of it so the light was bouncing in his camera, and then he moved a little bit and took another picture. And then he waited for about 5 minutes for the moon to move, just so he's like, okay, now let's see what that does.
And you can get different focal lengths and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. If you want a final result, Stable Diffusion. And this is something that, even Stable Diffusion, there's actually, until you've really played around with Stable Diffusion, it is not type in picture, get result. Like,
Yeah.
we've talked about this, but there's an
No, yeah, even the process of stable diffusion I enjoy. So, like, with inpainting, I found out, so with inpainting, I can completely inpaint over a figure
yeah
and make a result. So it's like, knight in armor.
yeah
And I'll take a picture of myself, green screen it, and I'll paint on myself knight of armor. And it'll give me a knight in armor. But what I enjoy doing far more is I go knight in armor, and then I just inpaint over one of my hands. And then I spend a lot of time, okay, that's the hand I want now. And then I inpaint over the arm and shoulder, and I get armor there. And I slowly go through that whole thing. And it's not about getting a knight in armor, it's about like putting the armor slowly on the whole thing and trying the different words. And
yeah
like, I couldn't care less about getting a knight in armor. Like, I know how, that's one of the few things I know how to draw, actually.
But even then, so it's about
The journey, not the destination.
yeah, but it's more than that. It's like your mind is integrating with the machine, or your mind is integrating with
The medium.
the random number generator. You're okay. So I have or had a flashlight that was a hand pump flashlight. So it has a gear in it, and you squeeze it constantly, and your thumb presses down a lever, and that lever spins a gear with all its teeth, and that cranks a motor, and the flashlight turns on.
Yeah.
So it makes this great big whirring noise, and you wind it up, and you're just like, and then you have a light, and you just keep squeezing it, and then you let go, and the light will last for a little bit, and then the motor will wind down, and the light will dim, and it'll go out. And it's very cool. It's completely see-through, so you can see exactly how it works. It's a tech demo of human power, basically. And I got it when I was a little kid. But it's very cheaply made. The gear in the center is plastic, and a bunch of its teeth broke.
Yeah.
So it was missing maybe an eighth of its teeth. It has like 30 teeth or something. And so when you press it down sometimes, you just get this soft squish where no gear catches.
Yeah.
But when you do that, there's still enough of I guess it's friction that rotates the gear slightly so that you can squeeze again, and then maybe you hook one tooth, and you get this feeling of engaging. Like when you're, something that more people can relate to maybe is driving a standard vehicle, where you engage the motor.
Yeah.
With, like, you switch and go into gear, and you feel that catch as you catch onto the gear. It's the same thing. And feeling a gear catch is like you're suddenly feeling yourself meet the machine. But when the gear is missing, or when you mess up pushing in the clutch, you feel the absence. But you feel it with your whole body, and you almost get into this rhythm of like, when I'm squeezing this light, it was like, okay, empty, and then I know the next one will catch a little bit, and the next one will be strong, and then I need to get the right pace so I can dodge the empty teeth.
Yeah.
And that lamp over there actually is the same thing. It's stripped so that it's hard to turn on. You have to get it just right when
the bathroom lock at our dad's house.
Yeah, you have to engage the mechanism just right.
Yeah.
And so this feeling of engaging in gear is you understanding the gaps and the gears and the teeth and integrating with them, and your mind becomes the missing teeth.
Yeah.
And that's what this feeling of with something like stable diffusion, or trying to make stable diffusion work even, and everything breaking, or bug solving, you are engaging with the random number generator of the universe. You're sort of like, I need to catch on the ether. Okay, but that's a miss. It's the same thing applying for a job. It's like you're paddling in air, and you're drowning because there's nothing, and then suddenly you hit water and you can push yourself up a bit.
Yeah.
And but it's like you're drowning in like ethanol or something, where there's not enough. Like when you try to swim, you just push it away from you because it's so light, something like that. But occasionally you can catch a handful of something actually solid like water, and you can push yourself up. And I think there's degrees of this. Like for me, bug solving, stable diffusion, that sort of thing is one thing, but then the motion of playing music or dance or painting or sport, or there's something like, I think the reason people like mountain biking and things like that is you have to be so focused on understanding the trail that you can die if you don't,
Yeah.
if you're not one with the trail. And I found this running down ski slopes, or scree, I guess it's called, right?
Yeah.
Like shale and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or running down cliffs, like not 90-degree cliffs, obviously, but running down cliffs that are littered with rocks. You have to know each step and understand each rock and how it will turn, and it uses a huge amount of your brain power. But even if it only uses a little bit of your brain power, you're still dancing with the machine, or you're dancing with the earth, or dancing with the universe. And that's how Alan Watts describes meditation as well, which I haven't experienced, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. And I think that you don't get that if you are just doing the same thing again and again, and you know the outcome of everything. You have to intuit rather than know, right? Because if every gear was on my flashlight, then every time I press down, it'll crank. And there's not a flow with that. That's just using the hand crank.
Yeah.
There's no flow. That's just what it is. But when it's missing the gears, you have to intuit a bit, and you can't exactly predict it because the speed will change and there's friction, and you'll miss, and you have to recover. And so there's stumbling and there's recovery. And when you're playing a fighting game with someone, it's like your minds are meshing as you move, and even against a computer that's sufficiently programmed that it doesn't have to be programmed very complicated at all for you to not be aware of its inner mechanisms. Yeah. Like even a turn-based game, it's very hard to understand exactly what's going to happen, especially if there's random damage or something.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't like games like Into the Breach, actually, because it's so what's that word? Deterministic.
Yeah.
But a fighting game is far from deterministic. And then even, like, it's almost like what this guy I was arguing with is saying, is that there is a best move. Maybe that's what I'm getting at. There isn't a best move. Like, if there was a best move, then when Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru played, they both play the best move.
There's a great example of that in a game called Your Only Move is Hustle.
Yeah.
So it's a fighting game, which it's a turn-based fighting game. And basically you perform a move, and it's like a fighting game, there's end leg, all that stuff. However, it says, like, I will choose to do the forward punch. And so it says, alright, so you're committed to this move for 5 frames. And then your enemy chooses to do a low kick. And so they're committed to that move for 12 frames. And then it moves forward 5 frames to the lowest commitment. And then you can choose to do something else, or you can carry it through with a punch, that sort of thing. However, it lets you choose a bunch of different options for what enemy's going to do. And a lot of the times, like, alright, so I'm going to use the laser beam on him. Because every single move he does, the laser beam is faster than. Except for this one move he can do. It's like, oh, but he's obviously no, I'll do the laser beam because that's the best move. So he is going to do that move that's faster. So I have a move that lets me block that instead. So I'm going to do that move. And then he's like, why don't you use the laser beam as he slaps you in the face?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. There is, even in a sufficiently well-designed game, the best move isn't the best move because you are... And that's where the metagame comes in. And that's why people talk about meta in games. Because even the best move isn't the best move. And every move has its place. There's... like, I think in Smash Bros, you hear about all these terrible moves, but I don't think there's a single move in the game that doesn't have a utility under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
The only one, maybe Ganondorf's volcano kick. But that you can 2-frame with it, I think. I think there's always, like, a better 2-frame, but even the discouragement of discouraging your opponent with your superior timing. There's an advantage there.
Well, there's even the
like
mental,
disrespect.
Yeah, there's mental meta of I'm going to volcano kick you.
Yeah. I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to.
It's the same thing as Fool's Guard in sword fighting. Is I am dropping my guard to only defending my legs. And this guard basically says, I don't respect you at all. And then the guard has a mix of people who aren't so good at fighting. If they use the Fool's Guard, it's like, well, it only defends my leg. But people who are good at the Fool's Guard is, this is one of the best stabbing guards there is. There are so many stabs you can do out of this guard. And it is deadly. It is one of the ways to end a fight very quickly. And so, dropping the Fool's Guard is either, this man's a fool, or he is so confident in this fight he can beat me. Should I attack him head on?
This is something that English teachers always struggle with, and I've talked about this before, where they give the kids examples of all these great writers breaking all the rules they're teaching. And the students say, well, why can't I break the rules? And what teachers have always said to my classes is, once you understand them, you can break them. But I think maybe a slightly better tweak is you need to learn how to break them.
Yeah.
Or you need to learn when to break them or something like that. Because, yeah, nothing is off limits. I've talked about this, right? How every curse is a blessing.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't grab food, right? Like, you're Tantalus, right? And all food is out of your reach. You're there during the great, was it Boston molasses factory explosion? And, like, everyone hides behind you as you stand in front of the tide of molasses.
Yeah.
And it just parts before you because you can't reach it.
Yeah.
There's always a utility to a curse. And there's always a downside to a blessing. So there's... and the downside to the blessing might be insignificant, or like, I'll never know pain. It's like, oh well. Or like, let's say you have the ability to grow, but you will never feel pain, and you're like, well, I'll never know pain, so you lose that relation with people, I guess, even.
Yeah. That's actually God of War. The main enemy in one of the God of War games is Baldur, and his whole thing is he's indestructible. He's Baldur.
Yeah.
And he actually can't feel pain. And when you first meet him, you're like hitting him over and over again. And he's like, I was hoping you'd be different, but yet still, I feel nothing. And he insults you with like, you're meant to be the God of War, you can't make me feel anything. Then later in the game, Boy shoots an arrow at him that has a holly branch tied to it. Or like the head of it has a sprig of holly. And it pierces his hand. And he screams, and then he starts laughing, and he's joyous because he can feel pain, and he's pierced by holly. And the spell is lifted on him, and now he can feel pain. And so then the God of War can kill him. But he's overjoyed that he can now feel.
I've seen Retromation, who he plays a lot of indie roguelikes a lot of the time on YouTube. And he's kind of a weird YouTuber because he's one of those ones where he just releases like, this new game. So it's sort of like this content mill of like, this is the new indie game that everyone's talking about. And those channels, they have their place, and I watch them because I like to learn about these new games. So obviously they have their place.
Yeah.
But it is also a fairly lazy form of creation in some senses, depending on how much work you put into it. But the interesting thing about Retromation, the major positive and his benefit is he's really good at games for some reason. Like, insanely, like, he keeps playing games that have a sort of, like, he plays roguelites, right?
Yeah.
And the roguelites want to show off their roguelike nature. So that a lot of roguelikes,
try to murder you immediately.
Yeah. And like a lot of them try to kill you really early on to show you, here's the progression, here's all the cool stuff you unlock, here's, death isn't the end, don't worry, and okay, now here's it. But the thing is, he's really good at games, and he often beats these games on his first try. Like, these are games that you're supposed to have like a couple sessions of unlocking stuff to get, right? But he beats them on the first try, and they break, because the developers don't even have contingencies for it a lot of the time. Yeah. And I've seen him play games before where he's like, okay, so I can choose this really good item, or I can throw away my really good item that's single-handedly carrying this for me. And it's like, I'm going to delete my really good item that's single-handedly carrying this for me just to feel something.
Yeah.
And he says that a lot, like, I'm going to do this just to feel something. Mm-hmm. And there is an aspect there. In Zombie Night that I'm reading right now, actually, that happens a lot where the older you are the older the undead are in the world, the stronger they become. And the very strongest of the undead, there's 4 of them, and they're called the Emperors. And the youngest of the Emperors, he's killed all the other, up-and-comers. Yeah. So all the people that are almost an emperor, he kills. And he gets to the point where he's, like, second-guessing himself in combat, because he will... someone will say, wait, you don't want to do this. And then he'll stop and be like, oh, why? And then they'll be able to distract him while talking to him. And their reinforcements can come to fight him. And he realizes he's doing it, but he just wants to have a challenge in a fight. So he's letting them come and do this. But he's also aware this is really stupid. And so he's trying to catch him. He's like, and the other thing he says is, you can't just let them distract you. There has to be a real distraction, or you're still letting them win. But he just wants to actually...
This is actually a common character thing because Demon Slayer, one of the top demons, is really disappointed when he's fighting one of the top demon slayers. He's like, you could be so much more. Like, you're one of the best fighters I've ever come across. And I want to fight you forever, but you're human, so I'm going to kill you.
Well, I guess Goku is the famous one that he does that.
Yeah, Goku does that all the time. That's very common.
But taking that aside from like an anime trope or something, you can bring that to sports and chess and that sort of thing, where the players, they want a challenge. They want to have someone that actually pushes them. They want to have... People want to be pushed.
The Canadian runner versus Usain Bolt.
Yeah,
he wanted to push Usain Bolt. That was his whole thing.
Yeah,
like when they're running, they're both grinning because like
they're pushing each other harder than ever before.
Yeah, Usain Bolt actually has a challenge, and that guy's running next to Usain Bolt.
Yeah, he's actually saying like, "Come on, I know you've been holding back. What can you actually do?" Yeah, people, and this is a thing actually. Like through all my experiential courses I did throughout school. It was a very common theme, which I didn't like, which was pushing yourself. Like, you got to push yourself to get to the top of this mountain. You got to rah, rah, rah. And I don't enjoy that. That is not how I want to go on a hike. That's not how I want to do something. I don't like doing that. That's not what I'm there for. But there is a lot of people that they just want to see where they break.
Yeah.
And it is where you've gone too far and you're too good, you're too rich, your life's too easy. That is your kind of person. Right. Whereas if you're someone who you're always in pain, you're always struggling really hard to hike or something, or you're always starving, or you're always losing at a sport, you really don't want that. Yeah. And so it is a very luxury belief.
Yes.
Where were we? Jeez.
We were talking about curses and benefits coming off video games.
But we're trying to get like this story thing, right, with video games.
Yeah, story. So
right, so the flow of emotion and that sort of thing. Yeah, so fighting games are there isn't the developer intended to create a sandbox for you to win in.
Yeah, well, I mean,
to struggle in, not win in. Even.
When you first said like they had a intended way for you to play this, and you play it the same way every time. I remember I was at a friend's place, and there's a bunch of us there, and we were playing Street Fighter, and the person was playing Chun-Li, and I had Guile, and he was beating everyone with Chun-Li. No one stood a chance against him. I was one of the few people there who could actually like maybe take a stock off him with that. And so we're playing, and then he just stops and says, "Oh, don't hurt me, Guile." And we just like, for about 10 minutes, had a little roleplay of Guile talking with Chun-Li, like hopping up and down, just like moving back and forth, throwing punches. Everyone's laughing the whole time there. It was really silly. And I don't think the game makers saw that. They might have, but
well, they don't need to though, right? Because you can make a funnel with infinite surface area and finite volume. Except this is the inverse, where the perimeter is finite, but the area is infinite.
Yeah.
And because the developers, they just need to create the sandbox, and then you can do what you want with it.
Yeah.
And they need to create the sandbox in such a way that you can do what you want with it. So my best friend and I, playing Melee, we used to do things like create black holes. So you can set up reflectors in a special way if you're standing in just the right place on just the right map, and you have like nests and you have the right items. You can create a black hole that crashes your entire console. And you can also play as Master Hand. Like, there's all these... That's more of just a straight-up hack. But you can do things in the game that aren't... In a fighting game, that aren't fighting.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, how do we play as Master Hand? How do we make this black hole? How do we do this? How do we do this? You can... I mean, Red and Blue is the example of people taking Halo, like a first-person shooter, and turn it into a storytelling mechanism to the point that at least Halo 3 and onwards has a green screen item in Forge that you can plop down in the world. Like the developers were like, wow, people love this for making stories, so we're going to give them a green screen item.
Yeah.
So I was trying to explain to this guy, I said, okay, so imagine you have a railroad that has 3 branches. So you're driving along and suddenly the track splits into 3 and you can choose what track it goes onto. And then imagine an alternative path is just a dirt pathway, right? A single dirt path. There isn't 3 paths. And I said to him, okay, I would prefer the dirt path to the railroad because the railroad, you say, well, you have 3 choices on the railroad of which path you take, but on the dirt path you only have 1, right? So it's like, but you said you like choices. Why would you choose the dirt path? I choose the dirt path because I can weave back and forth. I can go backwards. I can sit down. I can stop. I can lie down. I can draw in the dirt. I can walk off the path entirely. The railroad, you're stuck on the rails, and you have 3 options versus infinite options. And I think there's a huge divide in there's gamers that think games are one thing, right? And then there's gamers who, how to put this? So I think there's 2 broad categories of gamers, right? Where one of them see games as something that happens to you interactively. So they see it like a choose your own adventure. Because he was saying, well, there's tons of choices in RPGs because you get to choose which dialogue option you get, and that affects the entire world. And each choice is completely different, and your experience will be different from someone that made different dialogue choices. First of all, there's like 2 developers that actually make the choice matter when you choose a different dialogue option. But also, BioShock, did you hear? No, not BioShock. BioWare games. What's that? What's the Mass Effect?
Yeah.
The developers released that 95% of players chose the exact same option for all their choices. Like everyone took the good path. But even then, the deviation isn't huge because that would be way too much work for the developers. And even if the deviation is good in a game like Divinity Original Sin, you either get one deviation or the other deviation.
Yeah.
Except Divinity Original Sin is a bit different because there is the freedom to sort of do what you want.
Yeah.
And Dark Souls actually has that too, but it's hidden in a way. But as I understand, I haven't tried because I'm very scared to try. But apparently you can just like kill NPCs in Dark Souls.
Yep.
It just seems too cruel. But that's one subset of gamers, and they see games. I think they're the only group of gamers that see games as an addiction, and they're the group that see it as escapism maybe, and hijacking your brain, hijacking your evolutionary processes, right?
Yeah.
Where games are a thing that happens to you interactively, like you read in a Choose Your Own Adventure book. But then there's this other subsection of gamers that are aware not only of a different way to play games, but an entire genre that a lot of gamers don't seem to understand, which surprised me because I thought they were super popular, but I think they're actually niche, and I'm sort of in this bubble of, because whenever I go outside this bubble, I realize that nobody has any clue what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of the other group of gamers see games as a storytelling engine.
Yeah. And
they play storytelling games like RimWorld, like Crusader Kings, like Europa Universalis, like Hoi 4, like
but a guy quite often posts pictures of like the Empire of Mexico, and it spanned all the way to like the United Kingdom, or he'll have like the Christian something, and it's taking over Japan, and he just says this is so cursed. Like that's the thing he does. He tries to make something that just makes no historical logical sense happen in EU4.
But it's not just making something happen. It's the experience of seeing what happens.
Yeah.
And you being part of that world. You're living in this world and seeing what happens. It's not, I want to make this happen, right? It's, I want to see what happens.
Yeah.
Because you're not in control. And there is a subset of people that play story games, and they play them in a way where they are still mechanically bound, or mechanistically bound, where they say, like, for example, when Samuel Streamer plays Crusader Kings, he does this very weird thing where he says, I want to roleplay as my characters. I don't want to just choose the best choices. I want to roleplay as them. And you say, okay, that makes sense. So then he'll have an option like, do you want to attend this feast or not? And he says, well, I know if you attend the feast that you have a 50% chance to get stabbed and a 50% chance to make 50 gold. And if you don't attend the feast, then you lose 1 happiness. And my character likes gold, so I will attend the feast. It's like, no, would your character like to go to a feast or not? It's not, does he like gold? You like, I really don't like how he role plays Crusader Kings, because he isn't role playing. He's totally lost. He's totally lost the
thread.
Yeah, he's turned it into, which mechanic would this person want the most? It's like, no, you're not role-playing as a munchkin.
Yeah.
I'm role-playing as a munchkin who isn't me. No, you're saying, okay, this guy is a guy who loves friends and he loves company. He'll go to the feast.
So, in D&D is playing with a group of people, and it was this last weekend, and we were in this fight, and one of our party members has cast Magic Jar, which he can basically possess enemies. And we got into an area where there were stronger people around. And so he jumped out of the one body he's possessing into his jar so he could go possess one of the targets. Now that is the very unfortunate thing of the persons who he stopped possessing. They have all of his gear. And they tried to run away. And there's this huge thing of, so one of our teammates, it's like, okay, he can go now. So this person just casts a spell that's hurting everyone. So if he attacks her, like the person that was getting possessed, takes her out or makes her stop casting the spell, it's a huge advantage to us. So he ran up to her and said, please stop, we don't want to hurt you, this is a mistake. Because his character he's role-playing is, he thinks this possession is kind of evil and wrong, and he doesn't want to just kill her. It's like, no, please stop. I'm sorry about this, it's just my teammate, this horrible situation, we're doing the best we can, we're all in this dungeon together. And so, like, gameplay-wise, it would be optimal just for him to go, alright, hit them, fix everything. But it's like, that's not what the character would do there.
Yeah, even with, well, before I get to D&D, just the final aspect of this playing games as a storytelling engine is Heroes of Might and Magic you can have a story in, Dominions you can have a story in, you can have a story in XCOM. I mean, that's what XCOM is.
Yeah. The Legend of Yorkshire Farmer.
Or even Legend of Zelda or Mario. You can tell your own story.
Yeah.
And like I could never get a Yoshi. They just always kept falling in pits. I never got that's your story. That's your Mario story. I never found a fire flower the whole time. I don't know why, but I just never found. That's your Mario story.
Yeah.
That is you telling a story. And I remember this happened with our dad where he was saying how he didn't like video games, or he didn't like us playing video games or something like that because they're so unimaginative compared to the imaginative stuff we used to do and blah blah wah wah. And I said to him, well, no, when we're playing video games we're using our imagination. What are you talking about? Like when I'm playing Heroes of Might and Magic, I am telling the story of my character and the world, and I'm often playing as every single character in the game to discover this story, because you're not just storytelling, you're story discovering.
Yeah.
And this is where D&D comes in, I think, where there is different kinds of D&D players as well. There's collaborative storytellers, and then there's collaborative story livers. And like the storytellers are like, this would be interesting if this happened and this happened, this happened. And then there's the I'm not really sure what to call them, but like the collaborative story livers, where you go in and you're like, okay, well, we did the reaction check on the glow beetle and we got a natural 20. What do we do? Well, I guess it's part of our party now. Yeah. Okay, and now that is part of your story. You didn't say, oh, I'm going to tame this beetle or anything. It's something that happened to you and you reacted. And I think that's why I really love a dungeon crawl so much, because the story in that is so much... it's such a... You're not in control. I had a dream. Most of the time when I dream, and I don't know what the case is for you, but most of the time when I dream, if I think, oh, this is where it's going, then that's where it will go. It's because just by observing, you change the nature of the dream. Or sometimes if I think this is a dream, then I wake up, right? And so I had this dream where I was attacked by a bunch of people, and a police officer came along and arrested us all because they didn't know who had instigated the fight.
Yeah.
And so we were all brought into a prison, and we were all locked up in these chairs in this prison, and we were all sorts of like hazing interview stuff was going on to get us started in the prison. And the people to either side of me were trying to steal my lunch. So we were all given lunch, and then they stole my lunch or something like that in the prison.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, this is like, I'm getting attacked in this prison. I need to do something. So I went looking for one of the prison guards, and there wasn't anything around. So I wandered into the kitchen, and I went to the cook, and I said, hey, I need help. Like, these people are bullying me. Who do I talk to around here? To like get some order in the prison? And the cook said, you've come to the right person. It's me. And first of all, I would have never thought, oh yeah, the cook is the guy that'll handle these people, right? This whole dream, I was in no control whatsoever. It wasn't what I would have wanted to happen whatsoever. And the stuff scared and surprised me what happened. So the cook went over to this guy and he said, okay, I'll take care of him. And then he pulled out a fork and a knife. And I was like, okay. So my mind was like, okay, he's going to stab him. Nasty. Like he's going to torture him or something. And he just like taps it on the guy's collarbone. He's like, tap, tap, tap. And then he takes the knife and he taps it, and he taps it on his forehead, and he taps it on his shoulder. He's like, tap, 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 hip, tap, 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 tap. And he's like, okay. And then he tucks the butter knife into the guy's shirt, like just like in his collar.
Yeah.
And then he grabs another butter knife, and he like tucks it behind his ear, and he sticks a fork on his head, and he's like, I'll take care of it from here. You guys go on. And we're like, okay. And so we left. And when we came back, the guy was engulfed in like a giant bun, like a giant doughy bun. And they came out and they looked different. They were like smaller and like their skin looked kind of weird. And they had longer hair. Like they're sort of more feminine, but they were also like just sort of unnatural looking. And they were very meek and docile. And they're like, oh, no, it's fine. He told me everything's fine. And we're like, okay, that's weird. What's going on here? And there's this weird smell. And we're like, what is that weird smell? There's this weird smell. And so, and they're just like completely subservient to this cook now. And he's like, we're like, okay, that's strange. And the cook's like, and we're like, we're missing something. Can you help us find it? And the cook's like, oh yeah, I have some of those in my personal room in the prison. So he took us along to this door and he unlocked it. And he opened it and then went down a short hallway and unlocked another door and opened it. And there's this giant chaotic room. It's just like full of clothing and like just stuff everywhere. Like not garbage exactly, but it's like just tons of random stuff scattered everywhere, right? And a lot of it is this like very like velvety fabric and like cloth and whatnot. And so we're walking around and we're like, what's going on? And the smell that we smelled from this person is even stronger in this room. We're like, what's going on in here? And we're walking through the room and there's like a path that sort of arcs around the whole wide room. And then I see a leg sticking out of some of the fabric, and I'm like, and I just don't want to look because I don't want to know. Yeah. And I keep going, and I realize, wait, a lot of this is like there's the files of clothes, but they seem to be over like dolls or bodies or something. There's like dolls everywhere, and like, wait, this room's full of dolls. What's going on? And I noticed that and then as we're like halfway through the room, I realized the weird strong smell is yeast, and it's just a super strong smell of yeast in the room, and we're like, we need to get out of here now. And so we run out of the room and we see these like 4 female prisoners and they're walking towards the room and they're like, oh, why do you guys get to go to the cook's room? Why are you so special? Always discriminating against women in this prison and whatnot. And we're like, no, stay out of that room. Stay out of that room. We're like, no, we're going to go in and we're going to get what you guys got. And we're going to go in. We're like, no, stay out of this room.
You're saying like the fabric guy makes me think of the cook as a giant spider.
Well, what it really, it reminds me of that Roald Dahl story, The Landlady, where she like mummifies people and turns them into dolls. Like it was very much like he was turning people into dolls, like with his bread or something.
Yeah, well, it's also thinking of Coraline.
Yeah,
like the spider from Coraline.
But like I was not in control. Sometimes in the dream, I knew I was dreaming and I just couldn't wake up, and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen next. And the crazy thing is, you think it would be chaotic, but it had a plot. Like it all made sense. It all tied back together. It all looped back together, and that is what I like in a story. I don't want, like, so often I watch a movie. This is why I don't like movies. You sit down and in the first 5 seconds you're like, okay, I know the entire story.
Yeah.
And that's why I like martial arts movies, because I know the entire story, but it's about the fight.
Yes.
And that's
about seeing masters of their craft in motion.
It's about the art in motion. Yeah. And so that's why when I play Mario or I play Zelda, it's like I know how this is going to go. Princess is kidnapped, you rescue the princess, you fight the bad guy at the end, he has a second stage, you're done. It's like, okay, I don't care about the plot at all.
Yeah.
But it's the martial art fighting in the middle, which I suppose means, in theory, a game could have such an unexpectedly fantastic plot that I would enjoy it. And that has happened. There is a game developer, I forget their name, but they released Stanley Parable.
Yeah.
And they released the sequel to the Stanley Parable, which is called the something.
I thought the sequel to Stanley Parable was his You Can Do Anything.
With the Raphael mode, yeah. No. But there was a second game by that developer where like stop putting lampposts and everything and
I don't think I ever played it.
No, I think you've seen it. It's like you walk through a bunch of abandoned games by this guy's partner. And
oh yeah, no, I did see it.
He has this weird thing where he puts a lamppost in each of his games, and his games are all weird and
yeah, no, that game was weird.
His games are all about feeling trapped, and I thought that game's story was amazing and unexpected because, and the thing was, it seemed like, okay, I know where this is going, but then the ending, you're like, whoa, okay, that totally changed everything. Like Your Lie in April is an anime that I watch and I actually like. I don't like anime typically, right? Because it's so obvious where it's going. But Your Lie in April, the ending changed the entire story. It wasn't worth it because the story is way too long. But it's like, oh, okay, that's actually clever. That's well written. This isn't just a bland generic character. This is actually really interesting. It recontextualizes everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like Avatar. It's not that the plot itself isn't like that brilliant or anything, but the wisdom moment to moment is great. But then also the art and motion of the fighting and whatnot is amazing. But you can also say the art and motion of the words and the wisdom is amazing. Like there is something to a tired old story told very, very well.
Yeah.
There is something to that. There's something to saying, this might not break any bounds in surprising me, but if it's done perfectly, and surprise doesn't mean, oh, a twist. Like that works. But sometimes surprise is more just, you didn't take the most obvious path. You didn't have a twist. Like there's that, what is it, Rian Johnson or whatever? He's like, everything has to subvert expectations.
Yeah.
That isn't what I'm saying exactly. It's just, I don't need you to subvert expectations. Like you can still have the guy save the girl. I just need the path to get there not to be blindingly obvious.
Can you even, like, rereading a book, like, it can be blindingly obvious, but the emotion, like, I had a teacher who said he didn't like Lord of the Rings because he's a big book reader. He's really books. Like, it's so done. It's such a like tried trope or whatever. Like
cliche or something.
Yeah, he's saying Lord of the Rings is so cliche, and I got kind of annoyed for two reasons. One, it is the cliche. Like maybe if we go back to Beowulf, but it is the first fantasy.
Yeah.
So. Like, it's not going to break any new ground because it's breaking new ground in the...
But has anyone actually done anything like Lord of the Rings, really?
Well, yeah, there's the other thing, is Lord of the Rings is so masterfully written, and, like, the noble... it's noble dark?
Yeah.
Like, but just the nobleness of the characters
but
is something for me, like, for me personally, the nobleness of the characters, the goodness in the people. Like, it's like a cowboy and a western of like the he might not even be the main character. He's the main character, but it's like there's some boy who's following a story, and then the cowboy shows up and he shoots all the villains in the town, and he's not infallible, but he is so good, and he doesn't need this character development. He just needs to be there as the hero.
Yeah, then the nobility is... Well, it's a subversion in itself because there's something real there. And what I mean by that is you can call a person good or you can show them being good, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to show someone being good because you have to understand what goodness is. Yeah. And Tolkien understood goodness. So when you read these characters, it isn't, I know what will happen next, because you're not as wise in goodness as Tolkien was. Yeah. So you actually learn something from reading it. It's like Ivan in the Brothers Karamazov, where... You can have a smart character, like Artemis Fowl is a smart character. Lex Luthor's smart. Batman's smart. There's a ton of stories with smart characters. And so you say, well, Ivan's just another smart character in a very straightforward murder and mystery novel. But Ivan isn't smart because you're told he's smart. He's smart because all his dialogue is the most brilliantly written dialogue in any book maybe ever. And that means that Dostoevsky actually had to write that.
Yeah.
Which means that he doesn't tell you that Ivan's smart. He shows you. And to show you that he's smart, Dostoevsky had to be that smart.
Yeah.
And so...
Close to that smart. I think book characters can be a lot smarter than the writers.
No.
Even in showing.
No, because Ivan isn't solving the murder mystery. He's telling short stories about, like, Jesus and the Inquisitor or about the devil or... Right? Like, he's telling these short stories that are absolutely brilliant. But Dostoevsky wrote these short stories.
Yeah. My point is that Dostoevsky doesn't have to come up with them on the spot like
Ivan doesn't either.
Okay.
No, these are stories that Ivan wrote.
Right. Okay.
And then he tells them over to Ivan's a writer, so he wrote these stories and then he would tell them later, and they are so brilliant. Or the story about the atheist who takes 1 billion years to get to heaven, like they're unbelievably brilliant, and yet you read them. So this simple murder mystery book is worth reading because you're not as smart as Dostoevsky, and so you read this and you go, "Wow, I'm learning so much from this. I am seeing so much." And it's not just learning; it's you're bathing in the wisdom and the brilliance of a man's life distilled into a book. And Tolkien, yeah, it's like he took all of his Christianity and all of his knowledge and all of his wisdom, and he's like, "This is what a good man is. This is what a hero is. This is what bravery is. This is what despair looks like."
Even the goodness of the hobbits, like one of the huge things about the hobbits is very much the young man who goes to war without a draft is, well, I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And even though I'm not the best person for it, no one else seems to want to do it, so I will.
Do you worry, though? I'm wondering. The reason a lot of people, I think, like anime and JRPGs is because they see these characters experience so much pain and so much heroism and so much friendship, right? And they get to vicariously see these things. And do you worry that, or no, well, maybe, do you worry that the reason you enjoy these things, like Lord of the Rings, let's say, and all of us enjoy Lord of the Rings, let's say, is because we haven't been living? Like, I see people say, "Oh, I love this friendship so much in this JRPG or something." I think, why don't you just go out and make friends instead of playing a JRPG? And but then when I play Breath of the Wild, right, and I say, "Oh, why don't you just go hiking?" But it's like, I actually appreciate nature more playing Breath of the Wild. And Harry Potter, I love the friendship between the characters, and it makes me like my friends more and appreciate them more. So maybe these people, when they're playing these JRPGs,
I think it's a mix of both things you're talking about, your worry and the enjoyment. I think both happen.
It's not, okay, on the good side, right?
Yeah.
It's not, you haven't lived, so this is your desperate, you're peering in at what humanness looks like. Instead, this is how to be, and I am learning so much from this. And I also, this is how I am, and now I know I am right.
Yeah.
You're reinforcing that you're becoming a better person, and you are reinforcing the good in you already. Or you are just saying, well, yeah, it's like this cultural reinforcement of, yes, this is good.
Yeah.
Like Superman saves a puppy, and you're like, oh, it's good to save puppies. No, but you're saying, yeah, I thought saving puppies was good, and Superman did it, so it must be good.
Yeah.
To put it very basically, because obviously everyone knows. But if Aragorn does it, then you're like, okay, yeah, I'm on the right path. Or if Jesus does it, you're like, I'm on the right path. Yeah. And I don't want to just reduce all art to what do you learn from it, right? I don't want to go like Matt Walsh and like, you shouldn't enjoy anything, and anime and video games are for the weak, and and conservatives should sit in a room and angrily and stare at the wall for 24 hours until they die and get to go to heaven. Like, I really don't know what he wants from life. Like, if you dismiss art, there's nothing, like, when you dismiss art, there's nothing left. And what I mean by that is, you're like, well, sure, you can take care of your family and you can conquer Greece or whatever. But if you dismiss art, then you're dismissing everything art contains. And all those good things that art contains are also contained in conquering Greece or taking care of your family. Yeah. There's also a lot of terrible things from conquering Greece, but that's actually an argument someone made when I was trying to say, wait, what's left in life for you? And he's like, well, you should be a great man and conquer Greece and crush your enemies. I was like, that's not a great man. You're making the world worse for everyone. Yeah. People will remember you, but that doesn't make you a good person. And that doesn't, like, it's far better to be the good father that no one ever hears about than to be Alexander the Great, who, like, murdered all his cousins and potentially killed off his dad. And, like, you know, there's all... And Alexander the Great had a lot of good going for him, too. I don't want to say he's just a terrible man. And it's very impressive, the stuff he did. But he also, you know, every Persian soldier he killed, their wife at home or their child at home, their lives were worse because they didn't have someone wise to raise them. And that generational trauma probably lasted 7 generations, you know, if you want to go by the old Bible. Like, so are you making the world a better place when you do this? Like, maybe they're heathens that need to be purged for the world to get to a better place, but then that sounds very consequentialist. And
the very Christian view is to make heathens learn what.
But I also think there is a different... To be fair, there might be something said for 2 people meeting in combat, and the glory is to win or to die, and both are glorious. And if everyone has that understanding, then maybe war isn't as bad as that.
It's very Viking of you.
Yeah, or like Celtic.
Yeah.
Right. Or Germanic even, to a degree. Well, maybe the Germanic less so. That was more desperation, I think, a lot of the time. But the Celts, they would go out and declare and challenge people to duels and all.
Yeah, but actually the Celts almost more so than even the Vikings. because their Celtic wars were silly. If you really think about like a conflict,
I challenge you, so and so, to this. But the Vikings did that too with their
shield wall line.
what are those things called? They had like the duels, right?
Oh yeah, I can't remember their proper name.
But the Vikings and Vikings, like a raider culture, like I don't know. I suppose a raider, you could not care about combat. You could just care about winning, potentially. So the Vikings might have not been there for... Well, no, but they have the Einshard Jarg Valhalla.
Yeah.
Like, you go to the Eternal Feast, and you're an undying warrior who will fight and die every day.
Yeah.
No, they liked fighting.
Vinland Saga put Valhalla really disturbing. So there's an anime about Vikings. And the main character is basically a child soldier who's grown to hate war. And he keeps having nightmares, and one of his prophetic nightmares is he's being dragged down into hell. And there's just warriors everywhere. And there's these pillars, like, know how hell, like, you climb up to the top pillar, you can escape the lower down bit of hell. And everyone's there is just, like, murdering each other constantly. And his teacher and the guy who basically made him a child soldier is sitting on one of these pillars. And he's like, welcome to Valhalla. And he's like, what do you mean? Everyone here died in battle and lived lives of battle. And they're waiting for you to come down to them. He's like, I don't want to be here. I'm a pacifist now. It's like, well, you better climb out of it before you get dragged down back into the conflict. But it's just like, it's the depiction of Valhalla. Like, there's all these corpses with injuries, and they're just constantly fighting each other and, like, laughing as they murder each other over and over again. It's really dark.
Yeah, but that is their afterlife for those that die in battle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I was... I had a RimWorld playthrough where I was Vikings.
I was just thinking, leave it to a Japanese person to interpret a Nordic warrior culture, and it's like, this is horrible.
Well, what's that?
I don't know. It's like the Japanese insights on Western culture is always interesting.
Like, I don't know what it's from, but there's that quote of someone asking what happened at Shirayama, what happened to Saigo's rebellion.
Yeah.
Said they were all slain, no survivors. And the guy says, what a glorious thing.
Yeah.
Like, so the Japanese have their own.
Yeah.
But I think in that case it was more the samurai never bent. They never were corrupt. They held their ideals at the very end. When everything was against them, they still held true to their ideals.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily that they fought and that they died. It's
they maintained their honor.
That they never dishonored themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if there was an honorable way to have peace, that probably would have been happier for everyone. But,
yeah.
But, some of the Imperial Army died. I don't know how. Or at least they had casualties.
Weren't they hit by arrows?
I don't know.
Because I'm pretty sure the samurai fired arrows back at them.
It just seems like they shouldn't have taken any whatsoever.
Also, they were chamber-loaded rifles, so in the final charge, maybe a few of them got close enough to swing their swords.
Maybe. But it was... Well, what? It was 30,000 versus 500?
Yeah.
And I think they had machine guns too or something, didn't they?
They didn't have machine guns. They had whatever that British Tommy, like the something.
Well, the Maxim gun or something.
Yeah, they had Maxim
that's
guns.
American, but...
They had the British version of the Maxim gun.
Yeah. Yeah, so...
Yeah, it's probably arrows.
Yeah, or maybe like 30,000 people on a battlefield, you just like... Someone gets tripped or trampled by a horse. Like,
yeah.
Like, 30,000 people is so many, and they're fighting, like, a tiny number, and, like, yeah, they're going to have little... You're going to bump into each other and have casualties compared to their foes at that point. Saigo didn't even make it to the final charge.
No.
He was wounded, and then he committed suicide on the battlefield.
Yeah.
But, and I guess they don't take faking in Japanese culture. Like, you have a spotter when you commit suicide, apparently. Like, his second in command... cut his head off.
Yeah.
Like, what you do is your second in command waits there until you stab yourself, and then they cut your head off.
Yeah, well, it's usually your best friend does it.
Yeah.
Is when you commit seppuku, the brutal one of gutting yourself. If you commit seppuku alone, it sucks because you have to die from having your organs cut. But if you have a friend who's there with you who's not dishonored, then they kill you, so you don't have to suffer having your guts spill.
So you're there with your guts out, and you're just sitting there and like, spot bait, I tap out, and then they go and cut your head off.
I'm sorry I can't spot you. I asked if you wanted help earlier, but you called me a creep and said you had a boyfriend.
What?
Sorry.
But,
Goodness.
no, I'm just thinking, I don't know how it ties to the video game.
It's about like storytelling, the path we take. That's how it tied.
Yeah. Well, I guess moving forward then.
Yeah.
This sort of, it's almost like Douglas Adams has this thing where he talks about two movies or Scott Adams, sorry, where he talks about the sort of culture wars, and he says the misunderstanding is so nonsensical and so wide, like the gap is so wide that it's like people are watching two separate movies and thinking they're talking about the same thing. Because they're looking at the same object, but that object is projecting two separate movies because people have totally different interpretations of everything all the time. And it doesn't make sense. And I do think a lot of it is you're unaware of what you're unaware of. The sort of Dunning-Kruger thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think, like when I was arguing with Sitch about video games and he had never heard of RimWorld or Kenshi or any of those things. And he thought the goal of Minecraft was, I want to build a house, so you build a house, and then I want to kill the Ender Dragon, so you kill the Ender Dragon. Instead of, what will happen to me in this world?
Yeah.
This idea of, because that's how life is, isn't it? You don't have a goal and you grab your goal. You live life, and what happens to you happens. You, and it's funny because that sucks in life in some ways because you want what you want. But oftentimes you don't actually know what you want, and what you want is so shallow compared to what happens anyways.
Yeah.
And that's why I like dreams that are unexpected, because dreams are quite shallow if you know how it's going to go, and movies are quite shallow if you know how they're going to go. Right. And so when you don't know how they're going to go, that's almost the depth, because then you actually have to test yourself in a domain you don't understand. But I think, like when I was talking to Sitch and he didn't understand, or he had never heard of these games.
Yeah.
And I'm arguing with this guy, and he doesn't know what Daggerfall's like, and he doesn't know what like Zork or Colossal Cave Adventure is like. Like there's people that they have very strong opinions on video games, and they think they understand video games when they know nothing of the history of video games. They know nothing of they don't know anything of game design, really. They don't know why decisions are made. They don't know. Like, they know what they like, and that is something, right? Because you know what you like, but you might not know why you like it, and you might not be aware that there's so much more out there. Like,
well, I had this thought with Harry Potter, actually, of you have those absolute crazy Potter fans who, like, wear the scarves and are obsessed with it and want to go Parland and drink butterbeer, and they've watched all the movies, read all the books.
And if they just read more books, they'd realize there's more to the world out there.
Yeah, well, the same, like, read more books. Because, like, to a certain extent, it's like, read another book. But I think, have they actually read Harry Potter? But sometimes in my head.
Well, yeah, I get that a lot, actually. Two things to your statement there. First of all, how dare you? Because that's a funny thing where...
What do you mean, how dare you?
Because I think Harry Potter's the best, and I've read a lot of books.
I wasn't saying... My point was, I don't think a lot of these people have actually read Harry Potter.
Oh, right, a lot of these, like, wearing the scarves and the...
Yeah, these obsessed people, and, like, even though they've read the book maybe, like, 10 times,
yeah,
I don't think they've actually ever read it.
Right, because they don't actually... Like, she's a very anti-government, anti-establishment person.
More than that, though, like, even just, like, the depth of her characters, and it's like, she shows what a shallow person is like, and then how someone can be brought out of shallowness, and she shows... the redemption of a bully, and she, like,
another thing,
all of these, like, there's so much to it. And Sirius Black, like, so there's this one thing, it showed a bunch of different Harry Potter characters, and it's like, you can only bring one back. And I looked at all of them, it's like, the whole point, like, if you read the final book, like, bringing people back is really horrible. And the only one I could slightly agree to was bringing Fred back, just because, like, Fred and George are a pair. But I was just looking at it, it's like, Sirius, like, he died because of a mistake, and it really sucks that he died, but when he talks to Harry through the stone, he's like, it's okay, I'm with James now, like, I've moved on, and, like, there's just that whole thing in her book.
What if you could prevent anyone's death, though? Like, Sirius, obviously.
Yeah, preventing people's death is different, but, like, bringing one back,
I don't know. I don't know if it's that bad. I'm not sure. I didn't notice that so much about the story, but maybe.
A huge thing is bringing people back to life is horrible. It's like taking someone out of heaven.
I don't know if that is a huge thing. Like, that never happens. You never have someone come back.
That's the whole story of why you don't abuse the stone of resurrection. the guy's like, he brings her back and she's so hollow and sad. And so he ends up committing suicide in the three brothers who had the items from death.
That's not how I saw it at all. I saw it as the owner of the stone is the one who is wrong because they're not letting go of what they can't have. If you could bring someone back to life, that's a different story. So right now there's people, someone was asking on Local Llama how to make a chatbot that had their dead best friend's voice, basically. How to make it talk like they used to talk and that sort of thing. And a lot of people were saying, you shouldn't do this. Like you've got to let people die. You've got to let yourself move on. You have to mourn them, and like you have to feel pain. You can't run from pain forever, right? And so by resurrecting his love, he's avoiding pain. He's saying like, I don't need to feel the pain of her death because she's here with me.
I see it as two things. I see it as that. So that's the first half, but the other half is he is taking her from death. And a huge part of my belief, like in Harry Potter stories especially, but even just like stories with heaven, and in D&D, there's the whole thing of when you resurrect a soul, they have to be willing to come back when you cast a resurrection. And most people are like, oh yeah, they'd totally come back to life. But you think about it, if you have like a lawful good character or whatever, who ends up in heaven, unless they have a job left on Earth to finish, like they did their work. So why come back? Their job is done.
Well, because your job's never done, maybe.
That could be it.
But also,
like the whole song in Hades of no burns, no regrets, like that person's left it all behind, and then you're dragging them back into a world that has all that.
But the no burdens are because you're dead. If you're alive, then you have the burdens. Yeah. If that makes sense. Like you don't have burdens because you're dead, but if you're alive, then like you can choose to not have burdens when you're alive, but your life will be hollow. The burdens give your life some. The burdens are the ones you choose because you care about them. Like, I don't think there's any suggestion that there's heaven in Harry Potter, actually, at all.
I think there's a lot of suggestions there is.
I don't think there's any. Like, none of the characters seem to suggest that they're in heaven or that there will be a heaven or anything like that. Like, nobody knows what happens when you die. Like, the ghosts don't know what happens.
So Harry's constantly talking to memories.
Yeah.
Because that's as it's seen as memories. But the memories to me suggest that those people...
Those memories, I think, are a lot more like a ChatGPT type thing trained on the person's soul.
So when he's on platform in 3/4,
yeah,
and he chooses what it is, and Dumbledore thinks that's amusing, and Dumbledore's been waiting for him there. Like, it's all in Harry's head. But I also think a part of it is that, like, Harry could have moved on.
He could have died, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel that leads to whatever's next.
Yes. But that doesn't mean there's a heaven. It could mean there's nothing.
I suppose. I guess this comes down to a fundamental argument that we've had. I believe that nothingness is impossible, and you think that there is nothing.
I don't think there's nothing. I don't know what there is.
Yeah.
I don't think things. I don't believe things.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that nothingness is impossible.
Well, why is it impossible?
Because we've existed to this point.
But we didn't at some point. We could do it again.
I don't even believe that we never didn't exist.
Okay, so I have a resolution to the time travel paradox where... Okay, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to explain why I'm saying this first so that we don't lose track of everything. And then I'm going to say the thing.
All right.
We'll see how this works. Maybe it'll keep us more on track. So, I have a theory. I have a resolution to the time travel paradox. And I'm curious on your take on it, because I think it suggests a way that we can exist forever whilst still losing consciousness and any ability to ever interact with the world again in a way that we would recognize currently.
Okay.
So it could be like when you die, there's nothing, but you can also still exist always under your framework, maybe. So my resolution to the time travel paradox is that when you go back in time, you can change the future in every way, and you get like a new branch of the universe, essentially, right? But you've actually altered the entire universe. Like, the entire universe is gone. There isn't multiple dimensions. It's just you've gotten rid of everything else.
Yeah.
So it's like you're drawing a line forward. That's all of time and space, and then it loops back on itself, and then the loop goes off at a 90-degree angle, and that's the new angle you're going.
Yeah.
So that loop is part of the journey. But the time experience for everyone else just takes a right angle. It doesn't follow the loop. So the the future that never happened now, that entire universe is only contained in one area now, and that is you. You are the sum of that entire universe when you went back in time. So you could say your memory of that universe is all that remains of the universe, but that is a connecting thread to that universe. And you could derive that entire universe from you because you were part of that universe. And so it's like this. It's like...
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
It's like this was the future, but this is the future people experience. Is just this line. But you experience this loop that takes 90 degrees. Yeah. So when you die, the memory of you and your legacy lives on. People can still make a chat GPT or a chat AI character.ai type clone of you. They can create one of your soul. They can say, this is how this person would have reacted. They can think about you in their own mind and say, he would have thought this. They can look at your creations and your lessons, and they can teach your lessons to their great-great-grandchildren on to the dawn of time until we reach until we reach a whole great new golden age where the Atlanteans of the future say, I am so glad that this lesson was taught, that you brought down. And so there is this thread through the universe that is unbroken forever. It's like a meta-time or a meta-space that is unbroken. But you yourself, your consciousness, had its moment and it's gone. It's that raisin in the loaf of bread where you're past the raisin now. And the raisin will never come again.
Yeah. So I don't see the paradox problem because how I view time travel, if you go back in time, then you went back in time. It's the time line doesn't shift. There's no splitting branches. It's you went back in time. And that's part of it. You've always gone back in time.
Right, but this is a situation where that isn't the case.
Yeah, I don't think that's how time travel works.
Well, we have no clue. This is one possible resolution that I'm using as an example to...
Yeah, and I'm saying, following my fundamental beliefs on the matter, that resolution doesn't work for me. I mean, it seems very science fiction. It seems like this is how you choose that time travel works.
What aspect of belief is there in this?
This is your suggestion of a way for time travel to work for a resolution for it.
Okay, so if I flip a coin and put a bull on top of it, right? Yeah. I can suggest to you that the coin might have a heads face up.
Yes.
That doesn't mean it has a heads face up.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean your belief that it's a tail.
Yeah, that's what my statement afterwards just said. I said this already.
Okay, so then...
you made your example, and I say I still disagree with your reason.
I'm not saying what is. I'm saying, do you see how it could be that consciousness could end while still maintaining that connection?
It's a very interesting question. Because you're giving me a hypothetical or example, thought experiment. And I'm having this thought experiment come against a deep-seated belief. And there's a conflict between this thought experiment and my belief.
It's unrelated, sorry.
Even acknowledging it would say that my belief is to the contrary, or that my belief could be wrong. It's very strange.
Can't beliefs be wrong?
I'm not certain, actually. That's what this is making me come think about.
I mean,
that's why I find it so interesting and strange. I think there can be differences in beliefs. I think two people can hold two different beliefs.
But every belief is correct?
Not correct. They're not wrong.
And can't you hold a belief and still see why someone would hold a different belief? Or
I can see why someone would hold a different belief, but I don't know if I can acknowledge that belief.
I mean, doesn't that sound like a cultist or something? Or being...
Well, that's why it's so interesting to me. Because I'm reading a book about cults right now.
But like that seriously sounds like ideological possession.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And so I'm questioning that because I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I can go, yeah, that could work. That's a possibility. So there's that there. But then my ideology, so to say, the ideological possession is going, no, that is not the way it is. And even if you say, yeah, I can see that, is that you then weakening me? And so he wants to destroy that and disagree in any way. It's like, you got this, like, you know an egg elf, right?
Yeah.
Now you've got, like, these giant balls that float around, and there's the little ones that are the up and coming. And the bigger one's basically going, not on my life, and it's just going to eat that little one, destroy it before I have the chance to get anywhere. And I sort of see that in my head right now, and I just found that very interesting. Because no, I do see what you're saying. I understand what you're getting at, is that can be there. And I witnessed or experienced that whole thing go on and recognized that it went on, and that's what's interested me.
Yeah, and so it's like so could this... The fact that the belief seems to feel threatened mean something in of itself? Or to put it another way, should it not feel threatened given that it is unassailable?
Well, it's it being unassailable, so it's an unsayable belief, let's put it that way. So it's indestructible.
Yeah. So shouldn't it feel safe?
Well, let me get it through.
Yeah.
So it's indestructible. So it occupies my brain, this belief. It's indestructible, occupies my mind. Now, you put this other thought, you add this here, so this is something in there. So, is it being unassailable, indestructible, makes it so there's no space in my brain for the other thing existing? Or is it's not unassailable, and so it's defending itself by pretending to be indestructible, and so it attacks that?
And is there any belief set?
Well, no, the thing is there any belief that is actually indestructible? Or is it can there be a belief that's indestructible? Or is it any unassailable belief is actually that's just this defense mechanism? There's like a different way of going through it.
Yeah.
Because I've come to a very strong thought that the whole line that people don't have ideas, ideas have people. But sort of like you can be possessed, like we said, ideological possession. A meme, you can be possessed by a meme in the sense... and it can fill you up, especially if there's a hole. It's very easy to put something in there. Like the problem of having an open mind is people try to put stuff into it.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I've heard people talk about how you have to be rigorous in your beliefs and not lightly think about ideas, otherwise they might take you over.
Yeah.
And that sounds like... It seems sad.
Well, so one of the main ways people get into cults. Synanon. Do you know what Synanon is? It's a really interesting cult.
No.
Okay, so you a while ago talked about Alcoholics Anonymous is basically a cult.
Yeah, a good cult.
Yeah, so Synanon is a guy who joined Alcoholics Anonymous and basically turned it into a bad cult. And he did a thing, it's called playing the game, which is a member would come forward and they'd say what's wrong with them. And then every other person, they'd be sitting in a chair in the center group. And then every other person in the group would bombard them with insults and saying back to them like everything they did wrong. And they'd do that over and over again until the person basically can't talk, like they had a mental breakdown. And then, so when they're broken, that's when they build them again. So how lots of cults get people into them, because while I was listening to this thing, they're trying to answer questions how people get into cults. And I formed my own idea is... someone is looking for meaning, or they have they're broken in some way, they're damaged in some way. They need an idea put in there to basically have meaning. A lot of them, they're looking for meaning. This is a lot of people, and the cult offers them meaning. Religions offer meaning as well.
Everyone's looking for meaning, I think.
Yeah, everyone's looking for meaning, and some people have found a way to look for it. Some people haven't. So cults offer that as well, and then. What cults do is they basically make it so that is your meaning, and anything against it or leaving it is a destruction of meaning to you.
So, if you have an open mind, you have to be careful with what people put in it, and you have to be careful with what ideas you allow to enter your head, that sort of thing, right? Could the difference in a simulation where, let's say, where there's only so much resources to go around. Could the difference between an NPC and a PC be that an NPC can't have an open mind?
Well, the quote is actually the problem with having an open mind is people try to put things in it.
Yeah, but or could having an unassailable belief be the sign of an NPC? That'll keep you up at night. I want to mention something as an aside because I think it's important, and it's to do with the power of guardians, guardians over wards or parents over children or older siblings over younger children.
Yeah.
And it's something I want to be aware of here and for you to be on the lookout for. I don't think it's happening, but it's a very real danger in the world, which is that so guardians, right?
Yeah.
Which you can say an older sibling or a parent
Yeah.
or a whatever teacher. Our job as guardians is to educate our stupid wards. And the problem, and we try to, but the problem there is we also have the ability to hide our own wants and needs and like what we want the person to do for us or to become. Yeah. We can hide that behind our advice, and we can hide it from ourselves even. Yeah. We can disguise ourselves. We can say, oh, we're helping this person out, we're giving them advice. So a parent, if they're feeling lonely, they might lecture their child on how you should do stuff for other people.
Yeah.
Or and then you're like, oh, you should do stuff for other people, and then they're like, and do you want to join our quilting group? Or like how I lectured you about how you shouldn't invite yourself to parties, and it's like, maybe that's true, but what are your motivations, right?
Yeah.
And it turned out my motivation was more along the lines of I just wanted to get away from family for a bit, and I should have said that first thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like your advice can be good, but it can still be deceptive and manipulative, and you can still the ways we can deceive ourselves are as infinitive as our creativity, or as infinite as our creativity.
Yeah.
And so when I say our NPCs, the people that can't change their beliefs, let's say, I don't want to say you are an NPC, and I don't want to say because maybe this is something, right? Maybe if you have the right belief, a little pop-up goes in your head and it says play chess, play chess, play chess, and you are suddenly aware that you are right. And maybe I just haven't had the right belief yet, and so I can't share this experience with the smart people that have actually had it. That could be a very real thing. And like, it sounded just dismissive there, but I'm not. This is something that could absolutely happen. It could be once you hit the right belief, you know it. Like, when I'm dreaming, I don't know if I'm awake or dreaming. But when I'm awake, I know I'm awake.
Yeah. On a different regard, the insult of calling people, and like, it's a funny sort of thing, like, oh, an NPC. I don't know if you remember this, but I get really upset in RTSs when, like, my villagers got killed.
Well, like in The Game is Life, the NPCs are valuable. They're real people.
Yeah, and so, the Game is Life, they're real people. So it kind of holds a weird place in my brain, calling someone NPC.
Right. Okay.
But I think
it's just okay. Let me put it this way: in Jesus and the Inquisitor, you know the story, right?
Yeah.
The Inquisitor says people need to be told what to do, and Jesus says people need to be led.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that there are people that need to be told what to do, and there are people that need to be led?
I think so.
And people that need to... That's kind of weird, though, isn't it? The people that need to be told what to do have beliefs. You think they would be the people that wouldn't have beliefs. So could the Inquisitor be correct that there are people that you need to give ideas that they can't... Like Jordan Peterson talked about this before, where he thought that maybe there are people that need to have religion to guide them because they can't think through the ideas themselves, right? He talked about that. And...
I don't know.
And that's why I said that seems sad, because it's like but maybe like...
Yeah, I don't know.
Does that diminish human spirit? Because like Hitler, right? He said that to not tell people what to do is to abandon them, right? And... There's this weird thing where should you have more faith in people, or should you be a realist? And then you have like, well, Orpheus didn't look back. He shouldn't have looked back. And I don't even know if it's related to the idea of having a solid belief. It might be separate.
There's a very big thing in Christian culture, which is funny. It's related to me talking about afterlife, because my views are probably influenced by Christianity to a certain extent on afterlife, which is a test of belief. Or I had doubts, but now I believe again.
Yeah.
And so people actually do have their unassailable beliefs assailed.
Yeah.
And they doubt them, and then they come back to having the beliefs stronger.
Yeah.
And so maybe unsayable beliefs, like maybe people can have them. And they're unassailable so long as they're unassailable.
But even if you have like, I am right on this, right? Like, this is the way things are. You can still do thought experiment.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That
Yeah.
was part, like, so...
Because you were aware of the whole process, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to... Look,
Yeah, no, so...
I think it is really cool and, like, awesome of you that you were able to have that, like, meta thought process and then you were willing to share it. Like, I do not want to diminish that at all. That's really cool and very, like, self-aware and whatnot. And you could be tapping into something that everyone experiences and aren't aware of, or you could even be tapping into something that only people with like real brains experience. So do not think I am diminishing you in any means. I think it's very interesting, and I really don't want to.
Yeah, so what I was saying with a belief is unassailable until it isn't, or so.
I think I kind of get you. Like, well, maybe not.
So basically, each time it's tested, it either becomes stronger or it's destroyed. And until it's destroyed, it's unassailable. It's basically, I'm indestructible, and then you get stabbed. And if the knife bends, then you're indestructible.
But then, if your belief is unassailable, then should you avoid being tested, or should you test yourself as much as possible?
I think you should test yourself as much as needed.
I think it should be one or the other. Like, as much as possible, or dodge everything.
I disagree. I think it is tested... Not even as much as needed. I think it's tested when it's tested.
Like, shouldn't you try to destroy all beliefs you have?
Do you want to be Nietzsche?
I mean...
Could you live with the burden of being Nietzsche?
Well, like his pain and his fantastic mustache. And I'm not sure, like, what you mean exactly. Because I really... What do you think a Nietzsche is?
Let's just use an example.
Right, but like, what is... What core aspect of Nietzsche would you become? Like, obviously you wouldn't be stuck in a bathtub.
Yeah. You obviously need to be stronger. You obviously need to get more... You obviously need to sleep. You obviously need to eat.
Yeah.
But getting rid of hunger is not always easy until you explode.
Right.
Being stronger isn't exercising until your arms fall off. So that's why I say you test your belief as much as it needs. I think a healthy amount, but not... Maybe as much as possible even falls into that, and it's just a different way of looking at much as possible. Maybe you do need to test it. Yeah, you do need to test it as much as possible, but you can't kill yourself in the process of testing it. You only have so much time of the day.
Right. But you should always try to find some way your belief can be wrong, right? Like, you should always be skeptical of your own beliefs and try to disprove them.
Maybe I don't even believe in... I don't agree with negative aspect approaching of finding if something's right or wrong. I think you need to also... I don't know.
Okay, so
what makes a good story is having an issue, and the issue getting solved. I came to a crisis in stories at one point, which is a lot of stories is things are good, something bad happens, and then the bad thing is solved. Nothing was gained besides the bad thing stopping.
But that's not true, right?
That's not true, so that's a part of it. But also...
Because you gain what the bad thing could teach you. There's, like, you forged the nems from the dragon, or the anus, or whatever it's called.
Yeah. But also, sometimes there can just be good. And it doesn't make a good story, but there can just be good.
But, okay, how about... What is... You can learn more from pain than from... whatever sort of thing, right? Like,
yeah, but you don't always want to be in pain. And there could be an argument that you must learn as much as possible, maybe.
So Jordan Peterson, he has that saying, which is, you're confronted by the unbearable directly in proportion to your inability to deal with it.
Yeah.
So if you challenge yourself all the time, then you've covered all your angles.
Yeah.
And if you're constantly trying to say, what if I have a weakness here? Like, stores hire shoplifters, and that's... Well, not stores so much, because it's pretty easy to shoplift from a store. But, like, companies hire hackers.
Yeah.
And security places hire, like, spies to break in and whatnot.
But you don't need to do that for Saturday.
Well, wouldn't you want to do it until the spies gave up?
And so that's where I came to do it as much as possible.
Right, but also then there's this idea...
Well, but that's the thing. What I was saying with the belief isn't stable until it isn't is you don't know when your belief will be tested.
Yeah.
And Like, you can look for testing it everywhere, but that just sounds exhausting.
Or how about every time you are confronted with something that goes against your belief, then you must give it its due, and you must see if it actually does defeat your belief, rather than run from it,
Yeah.
or rather than dismiss it, rather than say, no, I've already defeated this.
Well, that's one of the other things. So when I saw your idea and my idea, just the thing you said, so the thought about being a raisin,
Yeah.
and I think that it's weird because that doesn't even attack my belief. It's a different view, but it doesn't say there's wrong in this what you believe. Besides, they're different. This is one option. This is another option.
Yeah.
So that's the only assailment of it. Is this is one option. This is another option.
Yeah.
And so,
But if there's...
in defense of my belief, I have to utterly reject yours, which doesn't seem right.
Well, it's not my belief, though.
In defense of the idea you gave forwards,
Yeah.
I have to reject it entirely.
Okay. I think I have it. So, I presented an alternative, right?
Yeah.
And now, if you have an alternative, that means either one could be correct.
Yes.
But then it's no longer a belief. So, for it to be your belief, only one can be correct.
Yes, and I prefer red shoes over blue shoes.
But isn't a belief something that you think is true? So...
Well, that was a bad example. I knew it was bad when I said it. Is that the belief I hold is the belief I hold.
And by giving you an alternative option, then that you can understand, now you can't have a belief because there's two options.
So one has to be rejected.
So one has to be rejected. So could you instead... So it does make sense that you would have to reject it in that case then to continue believing what you're believing. But, so I think there's two things there, I guess. Could you instead decide, okay, I won't believe this anymore. I'll hold my mind open that there's multiple options. And alternatively, you could say, okay, well, I still believe what I believe. So obviously there's another unknown variable I'm unaware of that mine fulfills and that one doesn't.
I think option 2 is what I have to go with there.
And do you know why at all? Or do you have a... Like, why can't you just say, well, there's multiple options? Is it because it's tidier in your head?
It's because I know one to be true and the other not to be, but I don't know why I know. And this comes back to we had the argument of how do you know you know? And I said, I don't know, I just know. And this is what frustrates agnostics and atheists when they encounter believers.
Well, but then the really weird thing, right, is that people will abandon their faith.
And so, So I don't defend my own belief here. Sorry, my defense of my own belief is the attack of the idea you put forward. And how I attack it is observationally to me, existence is all I've ever had. And even when I sleep, it either leads to existence in dreams or waking up and existing. There is no such thing as not existing. Therefore, I cannot comprehend nor even accept non-existence in a continual flow based on time. Therefore, I cannot believe in the belief you gave forward that I stop existing from my perspective of existence.
So I think another way to put it might be, I have given an alternative, which means that either you have to reject your own belief that there is an option and just say there's multiple options, or you can say my belief is still correct and the alternative is incorrect, and then what you have to do is construct some reason for that alternative to be incorrect, and that might take a very long time and you might never succeed, but that is something to look for, because then you can reinforce your own belief by determining where the alternatives fail.
Yeah. Or it was already there, because I've already had this.
Yeah, and your counter argument is now that, well, I can't imagine all otherwise. But isn't that a bit arrogant to now to argue your point directly, rather than talking about this idea of provide an alternative? To argue your idea directly, aren't there things outside of your understanding, and can't your understanding change? Like when you're a baby, you might have no conception of colors until you see your first red and your first blue and your first green, and suddenly this whole new world appears. So couldn't you say that just because you can't believe in something or that you can't comprehend something doesn't mean that it...
Well, I'd argue that that...
Like some people can't
No,
comprehend.
but I'll argue the point there. So, yeah, there's some things you can't comprehend. But when you cease existing, comprehension also ceases.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
And therefore, that is something that cannot be comprehended, nor can ever be comprehended.
yeah. But just because you can't comprehend it doesn't mean that it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but other things can lead to comprehension. You can comprehend things over time. You can lead to a comprehension of things, but that's something that'll never be comprehended.
yeah.
And
You don't. But you don't. There's some things that are incomprehensible.
prospectively, they do not exist.
Yeah, and that's why you don't exist after you die, because you can't comprehend it ever. There's nothing for you to even say I am dead. It's just existence has ceased and never was because there's no comprehension mechanism.
Well, no, then it never was, and so
Yeah,
you do not exist.
yeah.
But I exist, therefore I shall always exist. So, if you cease existence and never existed, then you never exist. Therefore, there is no life after death. Because there is no life. There is nothing.
Or you just can't understand a universe or comprehend a universe where there is a brief blip of something and then it's gone. And that might be the way it is.
It might be. However, from everything I observe and from what I believe, it is not.
Right, but your observation isn't... Like, let's say you grow up in a house and you can't leave the house, right? For some reason. And you can say, from everything I've observed, there is no such thing as a desert or an ocean.
And from your perspective and existence, that is true.
No, it's not.
No, it is. That is the truth. Those things do not exist.
No, they do exist. It's just you have never seen them, but you can still read about them, or you can say there could be a space where sand is everywhere. Like there's a little bit of sand in the house, and there could be a space where sand stretches on forever.
Okay, yeah. So then this is a case where there's a possibility of existing, where there's no possibility. The blip doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, I think that's.
No, I'm saying the blip is either all or nothing. And from everything I observed, is currently all.
So like Hawking radiation around black holes, where like particles just come into existence and fly away from the black hole.
Yeah, they're coming from another dimension.
I mean, that's one possibility.
Yeah.
Or they're just created. Or what about when God created the earth? So let there be light. There was nothing, and then there was God, and then there was light. So there was nothing.
But the nothing became existence. See, I don't agree with there was nothing. There was chaos, and God said, "Let there be light."
But then what you're doing is you are conforming all of reality and history and existence to conform to your belief, rather than informing your belief on all of reality.
I'm doing both at the same time.
Like
I have only observed what I've observed.
Right, but if your observation says the Bible says there was nothing, then your observation is that there was nothing. But you've decided to change that bit, but then you're not changing the bit where you're saying that you can't imagine a desert if you've never seen a desert. So you're picking and choosing which observation you change to match your belief.
I don't think I am, but I'm probably expressing it like that.
Or maybe I'm missing it, but like your observation, because the observation is that there was nothing, right? That's what God said. That's what the Big Bang theory says.
See, I don't think the Big Bang we had is the first Big Bang.
Right, but if the observation was that it was, and also these observations change, right? Like
so the key observation is I exist. I think, therefore I am.
Mm-hmm.
I am, therefore I am. I live, therefore I have lived. I live, therefore I will live. I have lived and I will live.
What's that called? But you can see other people die.
Yes, they die, and whatever happens next happens next.
But you haven't seen what happens next.
No, I have not.
So how can you have any observation about it?
I don't. I only have my own observation. Seeing someone else die is meaningless to my observation of self. The crude biomass of the machine that they are has stopped working, but they have not stopped.
But you haven't observed that they haven't stopped. So again, it doesn't sound like it's based on your observation.
No, but I've observed that I have not stopped.
Or like a baby can learn to walk by watching someone else walk, right?
Yes.
So you could learn to die by watching someone else die, let's say.
Wrong, not the point. I observe them die, yes. But I observe that I still live. I am still going.
But if the baby watches someone walk and they watch themselves not walk...
No, you're conflating positive and negatives with each other when they're not conflatable. You're equivalating things that aren't equivocal. -1 does not equal 1. A plus does not equal a minus. I mean, unless you do crazy stuff with math, but it's...
I don't know what you mean by that.
I'm saying what you're saying is not the point I'm getting to, and it detracts from it. So, I observe myself live. Okay. So we have that as a white orb. So this is the observation. That is there. That has always been there. Now, to begin with, I'm not even convinced that other people are real. I'm still on the bench about that.
Yeah, well, the whole thing sounds very solipsistic, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not convinced that other people are real. I've been on that fence for quite a while. But I assume that they do, because I exist, so they exist too. I'm fine with that.
Well, it doesn't work, actually.
No, it does.
No, because you just said you can't...
I'm observed existence.
Right, but you can observe someone die, but that doesn't mean you can observe yourself die. So you can't observe that other people exist because you exist.
I do not follow.
You said that it's not the same thing to say a baby can watch someone walk, therefore they can walk, and to say you can watch someone die, and therefore you can die, because you are talking about matters of personal existence. And therefore, if you observe you exist, that's the only conclusion you can draw, is that you exist. You cannot conclude that other people exist on that framework.
But other people can exist because I can dream.
What does that mean?
In dreams, I observe things that aren't observable in life, the waking life.
Right, and you observe other people existing?
Yes.
From their perspective?
Yes. I'm not always myself in my dream.
So if you observe someone die in a dream, and there's nothing, then what does that mean?
That's never happened.
That happens to me a lot.
It doesn't happen to me.
It happens to me.
People come back to life all the time in dreams, for me. And no one's ever dead. They just appear to be that way.
No, I've been people that have died, and everything ends.
Weird. But anyways, so what I'm saying, I'm willing to accept that other people exist. So when they die, I am not dead, and I observe that I've continued existing. Now, I have not observed their cease to existence, nor have I observed their continued existence. So I don't know when it comes to other people.
So could other people die? Or could other people experience nothing?
Potentially, however, I believe that existence is a constant, and so I do not know about them if they've ceased to exist or exist, because I don't know, because I can't see the life after death, so that's not something I can observe. However, from all that I observed of myself, it would seem to be the case that I have always existed, I will keep on existing, and I will not stop.
So, Hitler, friend of the channel, favorite, did he exist? Because if you have always existed, but you don't remember him.
I assume he existed because people have talked about him.
Right, but you always existed, so why don't you remember him?
Because I don't remember always existing. Death could be forgetting.
Forever.
Not forever. It could just be forgetting.
Why not forever?
Well, very might well be forever, but you'll still be alive.
And what's the difference between forgetting forever and death?
One is a cease of existence, and the other is your soul still carries on.
Right, which is what I talked about with this thread.
No, that it has an end. It exists within itself. The raisins exist within themselves. They're self-contained.
Well, they exist within the bread. Like the raisins.
So but you are the bread.
Yes, that's what I meant by this time travel, where the entire universe is in your mind.
That's not how I interpret it, and I don't think you forget either.
But do you have any reason to think? Like, do you have any reason to think that there is no chance that you would forget forever?
No.
Okay, so given the chance that you could forget forever, then I think my time loop still stands, where your soul continues on because you will affect forever and ever because the entire universe can be derived from you, and you can be derived from the entire universe. There's a universe-shaped hole if you were to disappear that looked exactly like you, so it'd be like you never left, because you could just say, hey, let's figure out what this hole is. Oh, that's a Connor. Bam. Like, you could pull someone out of the universe, and then you could derive their existence from the hole that they left behind, and then you could pop them right back in from, like, scrap parts.
They don't stop existing by doing that.
Yeah.
However, I think observation is key to that. I don't remember everything. There's things I've forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's been a continuation that is me.
Yes. But that continuation could end.
But it hasn't so far. It's changed, certainly, but it hasn't ended.
Yes, so...
And I don't think it can end. Like, just everything I've existed... the most reasonable and logical thing for me, I'm not even getting into, like, I'm trying to do this devoid of spirituality, okay? That like, when I talk about this is all devoid of spirituality, all that stuff. That's how I try to argue it. I try to make it as logical as possible. Devoid of magic.
Well, it sounds like it's as rational as possible.
Yeah, sure, as rational as possible. I try to do that.
And I think there's a lot of arrogance in rationalism. Like, this is the way things are, therefore this is the way they will always be. I know everything I have seen, all there is to...
Then how do I say it...
Then how do you know anything?
No, how do I say it without rationalism?
Well, use God or spiritualism, maybe?
Would you accept that? Would that be allowed? Would anyone allow that who is not spiritual themselves?
Well, it's
without rationality, because that seems like most people have, if they don't have spirituality, is they have rationality.
Well, I think it's the only way you can justify belief is with God.
Then belief is supreme arrogance, because you know something people don't know.
No, because it's not arrogant if you actually know it.
Well, it comes off as that.
Yeah, but it doesn't have. But if you actually know it, then it's not arrogance. That's why debating like creationism or something is kind of silly, because it's like, well, I know that the world was created.
And so
or I know.
Either I can argue it rationally and sound apparently arrogant in the claims that I'm just trying to go with observation devoid of this is what I know and it's right. This is what I know. And I accept there are things I don't know. I accept there's a lot of things I don't know. But based purely on what I know.
No, the arrogance isn't the argument. The arrogance is in having the belief. Because you can say, empirically, we will never die. And there is a lot of theories, like every time you would die, you create an alternate universe and you continue on in the universe where you live. And there's this theory where you can sit in a room with a nuke and a switch that will randomly go off based on nuclear radiation decay. And every time you press a button, it has a 50% chance to blow up the nuke. You press that button 10,000 times and you learn that you're immortal. Now, you couldn't observe this from anyone on the outside because they'd see you blow up every time, except in the one universe where you continue living. And that is an empirical idea. But the arrogance comes in the fact that you believe that is the true and only way things could be. Instead of saying, oh, maybe you go to heaven, or maybe there's nothing, or maybe...
Well, does not that same thought of arrogance exist in saying that there is nothing? I mean, if that's the belief you have.
Yes, absolutely. That would be arrogant if you said there was nothing. I believe there's nothing, yeah. And maybe arrogance is too negatively connotated of a word. Bigoted? You see, we've done this thing where we with language in the last 500 years, where we highly value free thinking to the point where words that describe not free thinking are all negative. Chauvinistic, bigoted, arrogant. Like, all those words are just describing...
rigidity of thought.
Yeah, like the Chad yes. That is the first major change towards...
Okay, there we go.
Taking back chauvinism.
Yes, then the Chad yes.
It's still chauvinistic, and it's still arrogant, it's still bigoted, but you can make the argument. This is something Deepak Chopra did, where he said, yes, my beliefs are unscientific, I don't think science is right. And you can just say, yeah, I'm a bigot. And maybe that's where I do have a belief, because I'm mostly of the mind that bigotry and chauvinism and arrogance is wrong. But there's a lot of like empirical evidence to show that people tend to like being controlled and and not having to think about things and then there's this whole other aspect, which is people know, and it's hard to tell which ones know and which ones think they know. That's the problem with stating this is my belief, right? It's like, okay, maybe you are right, but how do I know you're the right one? What if Bob over there that says I know there's nothing is the right one because I believe it?
If we go to my actual belief, it's kind of miserable for a lot of people.
Like, what if you apply your belief consistently to everyone?
Okay, let me tell you what my belief is. The one that I don't say because...
So you just say it for the internet.
Well, I haven't said it for a long time. I might have expressed it before. And it's a really, really weird one. Maybe it's not so weird. I believe that what someone thinks happens after death is what happens.
And why? Why do you think that?
2 reasons. One is because it's the nicest in a lot of ways.
But that's no reason for it to be the case just because it's nice.
True enough. Still, that's one of the reasons why I think it.
Yeah.
And the other is there seems to be a lot of different ideas of what is after death. There's a lot of different thoughts. And we do not know.
Yeah.
Simply put, we do not know.
Yeah.
And so...
So why can't we just not know?
Well, we don't. But there are people who seem to know. And they might be lying, trying to make money, or they might have hallucinated. But then we have these really complicated, like really in-depth afterlives that people have come up with. And we seem to come up with them quite often. Like, people just come up with them all the time. There must be some reason for that.
But why does...
It just be something they do.
Well, no, I think there's a definite map of the human psyche in that, at the very least.
Yeah.
But why does it have to be what actually happens rather than a very useful thing for helping people or a very useful thing for...
for it to be helpful to help people, it has to happen. You have to believe in it.
No, because you could say, like the Egyptian thing, right? They're describing a process of how to live your life through their Book of the Dead. And the Christian thing is also how to live your life through avoiding sin, because then you get to go to heaven, or you live within heaven on earth.
Okay, but you see, it's also what I believe.
Right, but...
There is no yeah, but it just is. And you don't have to agree with me.
But if that's your only reason, then you shouldn't give reasons, right?
Well, the more in-depth reason is the other one of the observational thing. It's not there.
But you
because people seem to want reason, so I give it to them.
Right, but you've observed that people go to their heaven that they believe in?
Well, honestly, I don't know. Okay, I don't know if people go to heaven or not. I don't know any of that stuff. But what I believe is that you don't stop existing. I don't know if there's an afterlife. Maybe it is the you never die in your own universe. Like the bomb doesn't go off, that proceeds. Maybe it's one of those.
Or it's like the Brandon Sanderson book.
Perfect State.
Perfect State.
Yeah, maybe you get perfect stated. Maybe it's the game is life. But what's within that is it doesn't stop. So whatever system it goes into, there's no end to that system. Wherever it goes, like there is no end, but there is an end that after 100 million thousands years of existing, you are not the person you were for 100 years. But you never ended. Your soul has gone through everything, and it will go through everything. And it started existing at the beginning of time, if there's such a thing as the beginning of time. And then it existed when it existed, and it exists forever.
But is your soul consciousness and observation? Or is it the particles that make you up, or the molecules that make you up? Or is it the impression, the psychic impression you left on the universe?
Your soul is you. That's the best I can answer to that.
In 10 million years, would you be able to go, I remember when I was recording this podcast?
Probably not. Might be able to, if I'd remember recording podcasts, maybe. Or I'd remember the life of someone who recorded podcasts.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Would you remember anything at all?
I would remember it like I remember now that I was once 5, I think.
So it wouldn't be that your molecules now make up part of an asteroid.
No.
It's not that kind of live forever, we are all stardust type thing.
No.
In your mind. Or it's not, people will listen to your podcast and you will live on.
It's not that either.
There is an actual continuous you who was at some point that person that recorded that podcast or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's not the... So when I talked about the snowflake still remains. It doesn't become water and then a different snowflake somewhere else has a bit of those water molecules. And
no, the snowflake remains, yeah.
even though it might break and alter and grow extra spikes and be totally different looking from the original.
Yeah.
And at that point...
the boat is still the boat.
Because the boat has a soul.
Yeah.
So it's kind of contingent on the idea of a discrete soul.
Yes, probably.
Or... Okay, here's an alternative then. God is a writer, and his mind holds as many universes as he wants. And those universes have as many characters in each as he wants, and he can pluck them out at will. Like you can right now. You can say, there's a universe, and there's a character, his name is Bob, and I'm looking at Bob, and I will talk to Bob. And Bob, he's been having troubles with his wife, and so I say, Bob, what's the trouble? And he says, well, she just really likes ice cream, and, I don't like ice cream, and the smell does, it makes me feel sick, but she just can't live without it, and, it's just this funny little thing when we were dating, but it's tearing our marriage apart, and it's so stupid, I can't even talk to my friends about it, and you're like, well, Bob, that sucks, and it's like, yeah, and then boom, God drifts away and says, oh, there's Daryl over there, let's talk to Daryl, and Daryl says, yeah, I'm taking my dog for a walk, and you say, okay, so Daryl and Bob exist, and I can ask them anything, and I can say, okay, Daryl's actually in a separate universe where everyone is like these Klingons that live in this flaming environment where everything is melting and burning, and you couldn't even put any object from Bob's universe into it because it'd disintegrate. And say, okay, Bob, you're now in Daryl's universe, and I'll keep you safe. And so Bob and Daryl talk, and Daryl says, oh yeah, I'm walking my dog. And it's like, I have this trouble with my wife. And it's like, oh yeah, what's that about? And it's, well, this ice cream thing. It's like, oh yeah, we don't have ice cream here because everything melts. But that sounds kind of interesting. So God can do anything to these characters, but these characters are real. They have lives, they have stories, they have this depth.
Yeah.
And yet you could say they are all just God's imagination, right? But that doesn't mean they're not real. It just means that they can rise and fall from the surface at will. But that doesn't mean they're discrete souls necessarily. They're all part of God. They're all one. But they are all aspects of God. And God can even... And like I said, God was talking to Bob. So Bob is able to talk to God discreetly and have his own lives and worries and concerns.
Yeah.
But he's still an aspect of God. This is how characters and stories are, right? Like you can even do this crazy thing where you can talk to Aragon. It's like, I didn't even write Aragon, and I could talk to Aragon.
So, yeah, I can agree with this thought process. But there are larger and smaller affinities, right? But an infinity is still an infinity.
Well, Bob can be the god of his own endless universes as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I created a god that created infinite universes just now.
Yeah.
But, so, I guess what I'm getting at is, what is a discrete soul, and does it matter, and do you think there is one? Or could you, being alive 10 million years from now, be some scientist saying, hey, we used our...
No, it's not that.
You don't know what I'm going to say yet.
Okay, carry on.
We use our past camera to reconstruct the exact molecular configuration of this person, and bam, and then poof, you're there, and you're suddenly, the 10 million years disappeared in a flash, and you're there.
Yeah, so I'm there, and then when that person keels over dead, I move on to the next thing.
So are you suggesting an afterlife?
Maybe. I don't know. I just know that you don't stop.
Right, but when you 10 million years from now keel over dead, then 100 million years from now, the scientists make another Connor, and poof, you're there again. Right?
Well, maybe that's what's going to keep happening forever in that infinity. That's a possibility. Kind of a weird one, but yeah.
I think it's the most likely thing, really, for a sort of continuity. Oh, actually, I guess simulation is probably even more likely. So where was I going with that? There was God, and then there was... Because there was a point there.
You're asking about the discrete soul. Do I believe them?
Mm-hmm.
I think I do. I think the discrete soul is you. That's the best I can give on that. I think they can only be created and not destroyed. But I think everyone that's existed exists.
Maybe this discussion is focusing on the wrong thing. What is belief? Is belief knowing? Or is belief what you want? Or is belief what you hope for? Or is belief...
So, calling... I think it's looking at it through the wrong lens of calling belief. Is it knowing? Is it what you want? Is it... I think it falls within that categorization of belief is the thing next to knowing. Yeah. So you have like swords as a category, and then you have like arming swords and long swords and bastard swords. Belief isn't. Belief is sorted in with knowing, whatever the further out resolution of knowing is.
So belief is stronger than knowing.
It's not stronger, it's different. An arming sword isn't stronger than a bastard sword.
Right. What is knowing?
It's like belief.
Mm-hmm. But is it the certainty that something will happen?
I think certainty is also within knowing. I like that whole category group.
And they're different?
Yeah.
Can belief, knowing, and certainty... Can true belief, true knowing, and true certainty be wrong?
Depends on what you think of true as. Are we talking about universally true or prospectively true?
We can't... Like, true is true, right? Like... Or do you mean like metaphorically true type of thing?
Yeah.
No, like absolutely true. Can knowing... So universally absolutely true. Can universally absolutely true knowing, belief, and certainty be wrong?
I need a word that's yes and no at the same time.
Maybe?
No, it's not maybe. Maybe is either or. This is yes and no.
Okay, why is it yes and no?
I don't know, but that seems like the right answer to me. Because I think you can truly believe in something. You really can. But someone else might truly believe in something else. You might be absolutely certain. You might be truly certain about something, and someone is truly certain about it. And I think that both can exist at the same time, even if they're opposed to each other.
Oh, sure, you can truly believe something, but can you...
True. I'm not talking about belief. I'm talking about certainty. Two people can be certain about something, and they can both have different views. Their certainties can be different. Let's try to stick to.
So they can be wrong?
No, let's say that both their certainties are correct. That's what I'm getting at, because they're truly certain.
So if you are truly certain...
Now, it might be the case that all true certainties would lead to the same thing within the same subject.
So if you're truly certain, you cannot be wrong.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if it's possible to be truly certain.
Okay, so if you can't be truly certain, then why should you think that you are truly certain?
Well, maybe you can be. Maybe you've found the key that fits into that part of the universe.
So can you be truly certain and be wrong?
I don't think so, no.
So certainty, belief, and knowing you are correct about.
If they are true.
But aren't they true by... Yes, truly knowing, truly believing, and truly certain you are correct about. Okay, yes. So now why should you have any reason to think that your beliefs are true?
Because I know they are.
But if beliefs can be wrong... So you said beliefs can be wrong, right?
Yeah.
So if beliefs can be wrong...
Because it's been tested and has not been found wanting so far.
So far. But there's still a chance it could be in the future.
Yeah, well, I die and then nothing happens, then I was clearly wrong.
Right. So if that's possible, then how can you have that belief?
Because it's only at the case in point where it's proven wrong that I don't have it. Okay, I have two boxes. One has a cat in it that's alive, the other has a cat in it that's dead.
Okay.
You don't know which one has the living cat, which one has the dead cat.
Okay.
Now I tell you that the box I gave you has the live cat in it.
Yeah.
Until you open that box, you have a live cat.
No. I don't know what I have.
No, I told you there's a live cat in there.
Right, but you could be wrong, you could be lying.
Yeah, but there's a live cat in there until you find out.
No, there's either a live cat or a dead cat until I find out.
Alright, so I give you a box with a piece of uranium in it and a cat.
Yeah.
I give you Schrodinger's cat in a box.
Yeah.
So you have a cat in the box until you open it. Then it's dead or alive.
Yeah, but while it's not open, then it's dead or alive.
And a belief is like that. Until you open it, it's dead or alive.
Or the box is empty.
Yeah.
So are beliefs just your current best guess?
If that's the way to look at it. It's like believing in Santa. There's a man that comes and then you're told that it's not.
So your definition of belief is your current best guess.
No, it's your current belief, because guess is also under the category where beliefs lie. But sure, we can say for simplicity that's your current best guess, but it's more than a guess. It is what you believe, which is different than guessing.
So we can't say it's a guess.
Yeah.
Because if you give me the box and you say the cat's alive, why would I believe the cat's alive?
Because you trust me. And it's all you know is the cat is alive, by all the information that you've been given. I mean, unless you think people are giving out dead cats.
But why would I believe that there's anything in the box at all? Why would I have any belief about the box? Why would I believe you handed me a box?
Because I gave you a box, you nihilistic freak.
I'm not nihilist, but like I could be hallucinating. I could be a brain damaged like peasant man in 18th century China. Like what do I have any basis to base anything on?
All right, Thomas Covenant. So when he finally embraces the world, even though it could not be, it might all be a dream, but he decides to embrace it.
Yeah.
That is belief.
No, that's just sensible, right? Like you don't have to believe in it to act as if it's real. Okay, wait, let's go back though. You said so if you act as if it's real, that is belief.
Yes.
Okay. How do you choose your beliefs?
Probably informed life experience that has happened over time, towards observation that collates in a belief forming.
So all observation shows that people die, so shouldn't you act as if you will die?
Yeah, I'll die, but death isn't the end. I mean, I'm not even certain if I'll die, to be perfectly honest.
But if you're acting as if death is not the end.
Also, my observations through life, because you just said I would be able to die, but there are a lot of observations about afterlife as well, people talking about it and stuff. So that's formed within that belief from those observations.
So belief is when you act as if something is real.
Yes, and that thing is real until it is not. And that is why every person has their own afterlife.
No, that part doesn't follow.
Belief is the question.
What question?
The question.
What's the question?
Was the color red? Was the moon?
No, but you said belief is is when you act as if something is real.
Yes, and it is real until it is not.
No, why are you adding that second part?
Because it's very insulting without it. Because it's describing someone as absolutely insane and living in a world that doesn't exist. But to their observation, it does.
I think that might be your own connotation there.
Yeah, well, that's what I interpret what you're saying with the language barrier between us. And that's why I add that.
But I think that totally changes the nature of it. Like, okay, so belief is when you act as if something is real.
Yeah, okay, sure. Yes, that is right.
Was that what we said before?
Yes.
So Thomas Covenant became a believer when he decided to act as if the world was real.
Yes.
I guess he's called the unbeliever. So Jordan Peterson believes in God because he acts as though God is real.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean God exists.
Yes. It also doesn't mean that God doesn't exist.
Well, that goes without saying, I think. Yeah.
I don't think so, because I had to say it.
Goes without saying for me.
Yes.
But why does that mean that everyone's afterlife exists?
It's because it's what they believe in. Because we haven't seen beyond death yet.
Are you sure that's what we said belief was when you act as if something's real? Because it made sense for a moment, but now it doesn't. I don't think that's what we must have said. And it doesn't make sense at all with the afterlife thing. Okay, so belief... Was that actually what we said belief was? Or was it some other wording? Belief?
There might have been some other wording. But the word...
Belief is when you act as if something is real.
Yeah. I'm actually quite satisfied with that.
Can we go back and listen to it? Because it's really bothering me.
I don't really have time for that.
Alright. I'll listen to it in my own time, and I'll keep thinking about it, I guess, then. Okay, so let's just say that's what it was, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so belief is when you act as if something is real. And everyone believes in their own afterlife. But someone else's belief doesn't affect my belief.
Yes.
So everyone's afterlife is real to them.
Yeah.
But if you say then, I believe that life doesn't end, or I believe that there is life after death, you are saying, I will act as if there was life after death. You are not saying there is life after death.
I think they're the same thing, but yeah. I'll act as if there's life after death.
Acting as if there's life after death and there being life after death are the same thing.
Yes. Acting as if this room is real and saying that this room is real are the same thing, if you're being honest.
So when an actor gets stabbed by an imaginary sword, all the other actors are acting as if it's real.
Yes.
But that actor isn't because they haven't had the courtesy to die.
Well, maybe they're acting as best they can. It's hard.
But they're not acting as if it's real because if...
Well, maybe they do and it's a really good performance. Well, then they can stop the act.
No, but they're not acting as if it's real because if they were acting as if it's real, then it would be real and the sword would kill them. So they're not acting as if it's real. Because you said it's the same thing if you act as if it's real or if it is real.
It goes one way but not back the other.
Yeah, but you're... Well, no, you can't do that because...
Yes, you can.
No, because then heaven would have... afterlife would have to be real first before you could act as if it was real. And then that totally gets rid of the whole definition of belief we just came up with. Because you're only acting as if it's real because it is real at that point.
No, it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's real because you're acting as if it's real.
Yes.
Yeah. But with the play, it's not real. And so the guy isn't...
It's real for the moment. It's real until it's done.
But he's not dead. The sword kills you.
Yeah, but it didn't kill him.
Because he wasn't acting as if it was real. If he was acting as if it's real, he would have his shirt split and his...
No, he's acting as if it's real, but then when the act's done, the act is over. You muddled it.
No, you're muddling it. I'm just saying that all the other actors are acting as if the sword's real, but the actor that gets stabbed isn't acting as if it's real. He's acting as if he got stabbed by an imaginary sword.
Sure, yes.
Yeah. But if you act as if there's a dragon in the room, then the dragon is real because you're running from it and dodging its fire and it's...
Yes.
But the house doesn't burn down.
No.
So doesn't that suggest that there's a difference? Like, wouldn't a real dragon burn down the house?
Well, it did burn down the house to you.
Okay, right.
It's like an illusion D&D.
But then didn't you, fall through the floor or something?
Well, you might have, if you actually believe it.
But then that seems to put belief in contradiction to objective truth. And it's all about my truth, personal truth.
When it boils down to it, it kind of is.
But there should be, the right heaven and the right morality.
And that's why people kill each other.
And there should be a dragon or there isn't.
Yeah, and that's why people go to asylums. Because there's truths and beliefs people agree on.
Yeah.
And sometimes people want to have other people's beliefs.
But isn't that belief that we agree on the closest semblance we have of the truth?
Probably.
And therefore, your beliefs can't just defy the truth.
No idea.
Like if a police officer says, hey, stop loitering, and you're like, I don't believe you're real, and he shoots you in the head, and you say, I don't believe I'm dead, and then you get up and you walk away.
That's pretty strong belief.
But engage with it seriously.
I am engaging with it seriously.
You can't just believe yourself up from being shot in the head.
Maybe you can, we don't know. If everyone else believes he's dead, so he's dead. But maybe he isn't to him.
Well, what if everyone believes you go to hell?
Well, then they went to hell, but for them they went to heaven.
No, what if everyone believes you go to hell?
Me?
Yes, you.
Well, I believe I don't.
Yeah, but there's more of them.
That doesn't matter.
So then...
It's my own personal observation.
So then they can...
Within this framework where we're working, where I was trying to explain it through observational insanity of that you said nothing exists, and so I've been running out this framework that you say nothing exists except for what you believe in. And it works.
No, I'm not saying that nothing exists. I'm saying, why would you believe in anything?
Why are you in this room?
Who says I am?
I do. But apparently you don't think you are.
I didn't say I don't think I'm in this room. I said I don't believe I'm in this room.
Okay, well then where are you?
No, I don't. I'm ambivalent. It's a super state.
Yeah, some people aren't ambivalent.
Yeah, but that doesn't make sense.
The color red doesn't make sense to a blind man.
Isn't that my point?
I'm saying you're belief blind. How am I supposed to describe the color red to a blind man? I've been trying. Apparently it didn't work. I thought it was for a moment.
Well, no, if your definition of belief is that, and that's why I think we should change tack and it worked, where if your definition of belief is that you act as if it's real,
yeah,
then sure, I believe in things.
Okay, yeah, you act as if it's real. There.
Probably. But then the question is, why do you act as if things are real? It still doesn't get rid of the question, right?
Why don't you? It's up to your choice how to act and proceed.
But it's not, because reality is, or objective truth is a thing.
Well, you
Or
believe
it
it's a
isn't.
true thing. It might not be.
Right. It may or may not be, but why would you... Okay, so when you say that you believe that you don't die, you are saying, I will act as if I won't die, or I will act as if life doesn't end, or I'll act as if I won't end.
Yes.
But that doesn't bring you to heaven, right?
I believe it does. I'm acting as if it does, and that's the response to someone acting as if this would say.
Isn't that... it's just a circular reasoning, though, isn't it? Like, circular reasoning works, therefore I will use circular reasoning to get what I want. Why does circular reasoning work? Because it works. Like, it can be a great framework for living your life, right? Like, you can act as if heaven is real, and maybe that's very beneficial to you. But that doesn't mean it exists. You can
But if I'm acting if it exists, then what's the difference of it existing or not existing? Why do you have to have this uncertainty? Why do you have to be such a party pooper?
Because 400 years from now, you won't be sitting on cloud 9 talking to Jesus, playing a harp with a halo above your head.
I might be. I don't believe I will be, but that's a possibility.
But your belief doesn't influence whether or not this event will occur.
No, but it's like predicting the future.
Which is like the greatest blasphemy against God or something, isn't it?
It's not doing the damn thing.
No, but you're saying it makes it exist, right? But what I'm saying is then what is the word for something that actually will happen?
That's blasphemy.
No, it's blasphemy to incorrectly predict the future. There's prophecy.
Well, then there's belief in prophecy. There you go.
No, but if I want to say heaven actually factually exists and you will be sitting there in 400 years playing
Then that's what you believe in.
No. I'm saying this is what is. Okay. How do I say that? What words do I say to say this is...
They're the same thing.
No, your belief is wrong, and everyone else's belief is wrong, and you will be sitting in heaven in the pearly gates 400
Well, then
years
that's
from now.
your belief.
No. What?
No, that is your belief.
No, it's not. I don't believe this at all.
I don't care if you don't believe it. That's it. What you're asking for is called belief.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yes, it is.
It's not in the slightest. Just listen to me for a second, okay?
I have been.
No, you're not.
I've been trying to listen as much as I can, but it doesn't matter because we're out of time.
It doesn't make any sense.
We're out of time. It's really frustrating because I've been doing my best, but
No, okay, just
words haven't been getting through. And I've said what it is, and it doesn't seem to work for you. That's why I say it's a blind man looking at the color red.
No.
It doesn't work.
No, there's two different things, okay? There's
two different things, and what it feels like is saying one thing is actual reality, and the other thing's a lie, and everyone's delusional. Are you saying that, or are you not? So I don't have to be defensive about it.
I'm not saying that.
Okay, carry on then.
It's not delusional to have the correct belief structure, but that doesn't mean to me that your beliefs can create things. And it's not a lie to operate empirically on your best assumptions, but that doesn't mean you are describing the underlying reality.
However, to someone who believes, belief is the underlying reality of what the thing they believe in is.
It's the fundamental in informing their actions, right?
No, it's the fundamental in informing their existence.
Then why wouldn't you choose to believe in a better world?
People do, and then they make it.
Why didn't you believe in a world where I understand what you're saying and you don't get frustrated and
Because
the thoughts get through?
Because it works within ambivalence, or you're insane.
What does it works within ambivalence mean?
I could believe in that world, but it'd make you really annoyed.
So you wouldn't actually be...
I could act as if it was like that.
Yeah, but you wouldn't actually be changing my mind or teaching me.
Yes, I wouldn't change it.
So obviously there is an underlying reality outside of belief there.
Yes. And what we said before is now all moot.
What do you mean? What's the problem?
Because I I was going from the approach that you thought nothing was real to try to explain this, because that's what I said, but then you have this ambivalence, now you're saying that there is that objective reality, I don't know what you believe. And you say you believe nothing, and so I can't... But then what do you observe? What is real to you? Nothing, apparently. Or you don't know. It's not nothing, you don't know.
Yeah. But it sounds like you just agreed with me, so I'm... I don't know. You sounded very despairing that you agreed with me, so I don't know what to
I'm
think.
despairing because I thought I had expressed something to you, but it seems like it was pointless. It didn't express anything. We're back to step one.
Well, it seems to me that we had this huge change. I don't know what you mean. Like you weren't agreeing with me at all before, and then you did. So I don't know what you mean we're back to step one.
There wasn't meant to be me agreeing with you or not agreeing. I'm trying to describe what belief is.
Yeah, but the fact that we had a point where we could agree, and we have a bunch of points where you are saying that I am not understanding it, means that we have sketched the outline, the boundaries of belief. Even if we don't have belief exactly defined, we now have springboards to work from, and that we have a single point of agreement means that we have a very strong entry to...
I don't know if we're agreeing or not. What are the point we agreed on? What's that? Oh, there's the objective reality. Is that what we agreed on?
Yes. Or we agreed that your belief cannot simply make me understand you.
Yes, I agree with that.
And so that would suggest that there is an objective reality, because otherwise you would just believe that you could say the words that make me understand, or you just believe that I understood.
Yes.
And you said, but if you did that, you'd be insane, because that wouldn't actually be true.
Yeah.
So that does seem to suggest that there is an objective reality.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to do with objective reality is I want to say, what is the word for objective reality that differentiates it from the empirical reality your belief is informed by? Could we call them empirical and objective realities, maybe?
Guess?
So then, can your belief create an objective reality afterlife?
I don't know if it creates it. It's acting as if it is real from an ambivalent view of not knowing.
That would be like the empiric, like all my observations suggest the afterlife will be like this. That would be my empirical.
Yes.
But you cannot make me objectively think something just by saying.
Yes.
So therefore, your beliefs, you are saying I will act as if this afterlife exists, but that doesn't mean this objective afterlife exists.
Yes, but empirically it does.
Because the empirical afterlife is based on all your observations. And, right. So belief cannot, create and alter reality?
That's correct. As far as we know. Maybe it does. But objectively, so far it seems it does not.
Or empirically so far.
Yeah, empirically, yes. Empirically so far it does not. But, Vampire the Masquerade, what wizards are.
They just observe things better or stronger than others or something? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that might be the case.
Well, so it was proven, what was it, last year, that the universe isn't locally real. I don't know if we talked about that, but, that it's only locally real? I can't remember anyways. The idea is that things don't actually exist unless you're observing them.
Yeah.
So all these, okay, so see, the reason I asked that is not to disagree or agree with you about belief or something like that. It's just to understand what is belief to you. Like what is the language we're using here?
Yes.
Okay, so does this mean, I'm not sure how to phrase this exactly.
Phrase it bluntly, I'll misinterpret it poorly.
Okay, there is no utility in belief for creating an afterlife objectively.
Objectively, yes, but empirically...
But if I want to live forever, I shouldn't start believing in heaven.
Correct.
Because then I don't really see the point.
I don't think there is a point. I think it just is. I don't think it can be helped. It's like your hair color.
Hey.
I'm actually serious about that with beliefs. I think it's like your hair color. It's one of those immutable characteristics.
You can choose to go insane though, right?
Yeah, but...
Probably. maybe you have to be the kind of person that would choose to go insane.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we gotta go.
Yeah.